هي beautiful.
Don't stop now. I'm getting excited.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another We Got a Case. We have a TPO starting right now. This is live. I wanted to jump on and not miss too much of this. We've already called a witness in right away. This has been a very contentious thing between a husband and wife. They're split up. People are tracking each other. A lot of crazy stuff has already been mentioned, and I don't want us to miss anymore. I think they've just now brought in a witness. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. Creed will be here momentarily.
Give honest and truthful testimony to this court?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. And
Sure,
you're
why
aware of Miss Morgan's relationship with her ex-husband, Mr. Mina Morgan?
Yes, sir.
All right. And just not to get in too many details, but how would you describe, their relationship over time? Was it a healthy one? Was it a tumultuous one?
It was a sad one, honestly.
And over the course of their relationship, did you ever witness Mr. Morgan either committing acts of violence or stalking against your sister?
Yeah, I did.
Objection, Judge. I'm gonna ask the inquiry be narrowed to specific incidents that are alleged in the petition, which is after the 12-month protective order is issued.
Judge, I don't believe that you were the judge that handled the 12-month. I think it's very reasonable of me to ask background questions because the court has to determine whether or not there is a likelihood that if you do not give my client a PPO, this behavior is going to continue. And of course, Judge, past performance affects future results. How he behaved in the past potentially predicts how he'll behave in the future. Domestic violence 101. And so I'm going to be brief. I'm not trying to belabor the issue, but I believe that I have some grounds to get into at least some background here.
All right. I am going to overrule the objection to the extent that he can ask what this witness knows about their relationship, but the most pertinent, obviously not spending most of the time on that because the most pertinent information is since then, but I don't know what this witness has witnessed of their relationship. So I'm going to overrule that objection. You may renew that objection if it goes too far down the line of older incidences. All right, go ahead, Mr.
So you can answer the question. Have you witnessed Mr. Morgan act in a violent or tumultuous way toward your sister, Miss Morgan?
Yes, happened once. That was when they were married, and he pulled her hair, scratched her back, and then I've seen, multiple times, she's complaining and all that. She's not safe around them. But from my own experience or my own, because I live in Nashville, Tennessee, I can tell you 100%. He's been just bad mouthing about her everywhere, church. He's talking to people. Everybody in the church knows that. The entire
objection,
church.
not responsive to the
Is this serious?
So don't go. Let's stay civil at this point. I think it's responsive. It might be hearsay, but I think it is responsive. So I'm going to.
By the way, real quick, Creed, before she gets back to letting them talk, there was an hour of arguments before this.
Oh, wow.
About putting the case off again. It's been tried to put it off. They put it off several times. Now they actually been able to push this through.
Thank you.
And there's accusations of trackers on cars, of the entire family, just all kinds of stuff. Just really, really hateful things going on here today. So,
God.
Okay, so you may want to rephrase the question. I'll sustain anything that anyone else has said. unless and until someone else has testified, but he can say his appearances, what he's observed, and go from there. So please ask me a question.
Mr. Watt, do you observe your sister being stressful and anxious when she visits you in Tennessee?
Yes.
Based on your personal experience, can you conclude why she is nervous and stressed?
Objection, speculative.
Based on your personal experience.
So he can say
Gonna be a
what
lot of
his
this.
belief is,
A lot.
but not what she believes. So I'm going to overrule that objection.
You can answer based on your personal experience. Do you
Well, hey, that's
have
why you get
a
a lawyer.
conclusion as to why she's nervous and anxious?
Because he's, based on what happened with her before, he was always threatening her, and she feels unsafe around him. I do not feel she would be safe around him at any point. Like, she gets scared going to church, and I always just take her there because she's very worried she will see him. He's that type of person that always wants the revenge. So it's just it doesn't make.
Mr. Shaw, are you with us? Hold on.
I am, Judge. I am. It's the audio is kind of cutting in and out, so I think I thought it was my internet connection and not.
Okay. Well, we need to make sure that you are operational.
I am, Judge. I'm just connecting a LAN internet Ethernet cord to my laptop.
Okay, let us know when you're connected.
Okay, yes, Judge.
Also, like that when he talks, it sounds like he's calling a minor league baseball game.
And just to be clear or to confirm, it was me, right? Everyone else could hear everything okay?
I believe so.
Okay.
I can confirm. Yes, we could hear just fine.
Yes. Even with my internet.
Any Creed frames yesterday?
Not a one, never.
Hallelujah.
Okay, I think
All
that
right.
should help, Judge.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Mr. Spasman, you may continue.
Now he's muted.
Mr. Spiesman, you're on mute.
You have testified that your sister appears to be anxious and nervous. And I think you would testify this because she's scared that she might contact Mr. Morgan. Is this a close-knit community? Is there a likelihood that they would have contact? Tell me about that.
Right, because we have few churches here in Tennessee, and they're all Coptic Orthodox churches. That's what we belong to, and it's pretty big a chance when you walk in the church, you will see some where and it's not only her being like very, very stressed about that. We are too. Me, my parents, they're always just very worried that he will get around her, or he will do anything to her.
I get that.
We know him very well, and we know how much he's.
Objection. I'm gonna object at this point, Judge. It's irrelevant what other family members feel about Mr. Morgan.
Mr. Spiesman?
It is relevant. It goes to demonstrate the petitioner's reasonable apprehension of imminent harm and danger, which is a fundamental aspect of this. I don't think we're ever going to get to the end of it if we object to every question, ever.
Okay.
Well, it's an objectionable question. I'm going to continue to object.
So no, we're not. We're going to make objections, and I'm going to rule on them, and we're going to keep going.
Thank you, Michelle.
I'm going to sustain the objection as far as it goes as to what other family members feel, and allow him to testify about what he feels or what he has observed. You may continue, Mr. Spiesman.
Mr. Watt, have you had any contact with Mr. Morgan after?
No.
Sorry, after the date of December, it would have been 16th, 2021. So after the date that you came and previously testified when your sister got a 12-month order, you had any contact with Mr. Morgan indirectly or directly?
Well, it was like an indirect, but in one of the churches we all park in the same place. So while I was walking to my vehicle, and I I was actually on the phone, and then I hang up. I was just, smiling. I didn't even notice he's around. And then he was like, well, we'll see who's going to laugh at the end when I send her in her coffin. I just looked at him, stared at him, and then I turned my face away, got in my car, and left right away.
Okay,
That
so,
was me, scary.
Just a couple of questions about that. So you guys were at the same church, and did he approach you in any way? He walked up to you. Is that accurate?
I believe he was walking to his car, but it happened that we got close because we parked in the same place. And that's what, he tried to make me hear it without even looking at me. Just, being smart in case, I'm just video cameraing anything. But I heard them very well. That's, and that's what I personally observing from the entire community, because he's been talking to a lot of people in the church, even priests, that he's not going to be okay till he get the
Objection, you're saying.
Mr. Spasman.
I think we're talking about what Mr. Morgan told other people, but I understand. I mean, he might testify, but I understand.
There's a double hearsay.
Okay, so hold on. So I will sustain the objection as to hearsay if it's something that was not said directly to this person.
Yep.
Or in this person's presence.
I understand. So, Mr. Watt, so you said that he walked up to you and you didn't say anything to him to prompt him to say anything, correct?
Nothing.
Okay. All right. And then he makes a comment to you about who's going to be laughing next. And then, okay. And then what does he say next? What does he say about your sister?
He said, we will see who's going to laugh at the end when I send her in her coffin.
Okay. When he made that comment to you, what did you understand that to mean?
Well, I understood that he's trying to hurt her, or he's waiting for something to happen just to hurt her. And I did not want to stand there, talk to him. I didn't want to get in contact at all with him. I just got in my car, started my car, and left. Okay.
And at some point in time, did you share with your sister that he said that about her?
I didn't want to do that. Like, I did not, honestly.
Good move.
She's scared already. She doesn't sleep. She's been really suffering a lot. So I don't want to add to that, especially that we live in Tennessee. She lives in Atlanta, Georgia. She's by herself. And, it became very, very sensitive when she tries to come and visit us. That for her, that's a hell. Like, she's really trying to avoid that. And we feel bad because now my parents are getting much older with all the medical issues they have. They can't keep going back and forth to her. But, I did not want to add to that because we're all worried. I don't want to get her more worried. So I didn't want to mention anything.
But you eventually did tell her that.
Right.
Okay. And what was her visible reaction when
for the moment, JJ,
you said that?
Yeah.
We didn't know.
Well, she got more scared, of course. Christine is very sensitive. She cries a lot. When you talk to her, she always you feel like she's gonna fall apart. And when I shared that, I was like, hey, don't worry, nothing gonna happen. You're okay. You're safe. I'm here to back you up. I tried really to make her feel safe. She's not feeling safe in her workplace. She's not feeling safe at home where she lives. She's not feeling safe when she comes to Tennessee because of him, not
church.
Nobody else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Egyptian church, by the way. People were asking about the accent. Egyptian.
I'm sorry.
Do you have any idea what time frame that occurred?
It was for sure on a Sunday morning, but
I can't
recall the exact date. It was, I do believe, that was around maybe September.
Okay, so September of 2022.
Yes.
Okay. Objection leading. And the only reason I object at this point now, Judge, is that it's occurred a few times now. So.
Okay, so.
Judge, I'm trying to get through this.
Go ahead, Mr. Spike.
These
it was a yes
attorneys
or no
are a
question.
pair.
It wasn't leading, Judge. He could have said any other year. I'm trying to get through this.
They are
I'm going
stolen
to overrule
numbers
the
as well.
objection at this time.
Thank you, Judge. After this death threat occurred, did you change your behavior to try to avoid Mr. Morgan?
I actually, when I see him in the church most of the time, I just stick to some friends, whoever. The problem is when that happened, it was only me and him in the parking lot. But now when I see him, I just try to avoid even seeing him or just making any eye contact with him. I don't want any drama. I don't want any trouble. And I know this is going to get me upset from the inside. So I try just to be safe. And at the same time, I do not want to engage in any conversation with him. So usually when I came out of the church, I just turn my face away.
There's some objection.
We're way too far down what is relevant for Miss Morgan. We're talking about how this witness is avoiding Mr. Morgan. How it's just
Okay.
I waited as long as I could.
Okay, so I'm going to sustain this question as to any. I'm going to sustain the objection as to any future questions about what this defendant is doing regarding his concerns about the respondent towards him.
I have no further questions for him, Judge.
Mr. Shaw, you may cross.
Thank you, Ara. Mr. Imad, you used to have contact with Mr. Morgan, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance. What does it matter what he used to do with this is about what occurred and what is continuing to occur?
He was just waiting. No matter what the question was. No matter what the question was,
Okay,
he's going to object.
and then may go back into it at another point. But
Which
go
I don't
ahead.
blame.
I'll overrule the objection and allow you to ask this question.
I wish that Mr. Spisman could have said, I waited as long as
objection
I
may
could.
be renewed depending on how far we go down this path.
Oh, that's so great. Oh, that's so great.
So, Mr. Imad, you used to have contact with Mr. Morgan, correct?
I used to, yes.
Yeah, and you used to be involved in the relationship that Mr. Morgan and Miss Morgan had, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, Rick.
And you claim that you've been afraid of Mr. Morgan this entire time, right?
Not the entire time till I figured all the truth. Not the entire time. I mean, he was my brother-in-law. So how am I?
And when did you figure? When did you? You've been concerned for your sister from Mr. Morgan for at least since 2022.
I didn't get the question 100%. What are you trying to ask?
I'm asking you that you've claimed that you've been concerned for your sister from Mr. Morgan for quite some time, right?
Right.
You claim that, right?
Right.
Right. And you claim that you've been feeling that way since at least since 2022?
Yes, I believe so.
Maybe even prior to that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
You felt this way even prior to 2022? You talked about a family violence incident.
I do not remember exact dates, but what I do remember, I tried to get in the middle between them and because I thought the relationship is okay and they just have some problems. So I tried to get in the middle. But when I figured, that he filed for divorce and he's been lying to me about all what he said, I stopped talking to him completely and I started to be worried about her. So that's exactly.
Prior to that, you wanted Mr. Morgan to stay with Miss Morgan, right?
Prior to that, yeah.
Again, hold on. Again, completely irrelevant what he wanted before any of this occurred.
That's my point. So I'm gonna.
I'd like a ruling, Judge.
Judge, we can't hear you.
If it's completely irrelevant, then what is your response?
Judge, I don't have any further questions for Mr. Imam.
All right, I'll sustain the objection as to that question.
Witness can be excused, Judge.
All right, thank you, sir. You may be
Lawyer
excused.
War 2023.
All right, thank you.
Like I said, they spent an hour bickering before we even started this.
You can come in. Judge, we call Sharif a third.
Mr. Morgan did not
He's
want to
gonna
move
come in
forward
for
with
my,
this today.
Waiting room, Judge, and I'll swear him.
All
Oh,
right,
is that
thank you.
like the
Yeah, just
beginning
swear
of
him and then ask
trying to
him for
get-
his name and to
Oh, yeah.
spell the name, please.
You betcha, Judge.
They were
They'll
wanting
be
to
in.
set
I
all
can
these
grab it.
limitations if they went forward today, so they've done all that. But Mr. Morgan's very lucky, especially with her brother. Her brother looked like he could handle himself.
Mm-hmm.
He's I don't know, maybe it's religious things or whatever that kept him from beating his ass for putting his hands on his sister. But
Yeah, sorry, we didn't know either. This
Yeah.
was going on, and got a call from Mikey a little earlier. So
Yeah.
yeah, we jump on. Give me 5 minutes, and
these things start when they want to start. We can't
Yeah.
control them for sure.
it's like live chases. They're not on our schedule.
No. See, we'd have missed all that testimony. We just started now.
You can sit in there.
But they had
Once you sit next to me.
this has been put off. Now, this is the second TPO she's put in for. The other one expired back in December.
Okay.
And she's been trying since December to get this new one.
Oh,
on him.
right here.
Mhm.
Okay.
That was the last one a 12
All right.
month. Did you hear?
Yeah. Yeah, 12 month.
They're far away from each other, right?
All right. Can you please
Oh,
raise
yeah.
your right
Georgia, I
hand?
guess?
You swear and affirm the testimony you provide to this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury.
Yes, I do.
And can you please state your name for the court reporter and spell it?
Shara Fatour, SHARAFFRATHUR.
All right. Mr. Artur, how do you know Miss Morgan?
We work together.
Okay, and are you guys friendly?
Yes,
Spend time with each other outside of work?
we do. We're very close. We're basically in a partnership in our work. So that's it.
Did
Okay.
it fall off after the 12
And have you
months,
come
or-
to know
Yeah, it fell
about
off because of
Miss
12
Morgan's
months.
struggles with her ex-husband, Mr. Morgan?
Indeed, I have.
Okay, and has there ever been a point in time where you have had any type of issues or problems with Mr. Morgan?
Objection. It's not relevant to this petition about the struggles or problems that this witness has had with Mr. Morgan. That's not what the petition's about.
Mr. Spiesman?
Yes, explain.
Again,
why.
Judge, the evidence is going to show that Mr. Morgan affixed tracking devices on Mr. Ruther's vehicle, who clearly him and Miss Morgan are very close friends or business partners and are constantly traveling together. So it is yet
Oof.
another act of stalking and evidence of why we need a PPO.
Tracker on
Yet
his
another-
car.
Yet another, yes.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, no, we're not going to, no back and forth. Objections to me, please. And responses.
Tried to get it away.
So he can testify about anything that the petitioner was aware of. And as to whether these were acts against her or him, I will consider that as to weight of the evidence into what I will take into consideration. But I have yet to hear the circumstances surrounding it, other than they work very closely together.
Georgia.
So I'm going to overrule the objection at this point. And you may renew that, you may object again if appropriate and necessary. But I'm going to
Right.
overrule at this point because I need to hear what the evidence is.
Thank you, Judge. Are you aware as to whether Miss Morgan has filed any actions against Mr. Morgan?
I think I understand what that means. Yes,
Okay, and are you aware if she's ever filed a TPO against Mr. Morgan?
I am.
All right, and after she got that TPO, the initial TPO, did anything of concern occur related to you specifically?
Yes.
Tell the court what occurred.
Okay. So
Gone to sleep.
there was a car tracker that was on my car that was, I think, put on prior to the TPO being issued. but it raised alarm for myself to be more, aware of my surroundings, just because it's disturbing, and I have a 9-year-old daughter that I care for. So I'm on high alert after that point. So anyway, we work consistently and go to meetings. After one evening, after dropping off Christine, after meeting with the client, I was on the way to my house, and I see the car that the respondent drives following me. So at this point, it's a little bit back, but I'm concerned, and I don't want to go back to my residence.
Okay, so let me stop you there and just ask a few clarifying questions. So after dropping Miss Morgan off, you see a car. You see something behind you?
Yeah, I see a gray Lexus. That was his car, to my understanding. Yes.
Okay, so you see a car that matches the description of the car he drives behind you?
Yes.
All right. And what do you do in response to that?
Well, I'm alarmed, again, based off of the previous incidents that happened to me specifically and surrounding all of this. And so I don't want to go to my house with somebody following me. And so I put on the brakes to just kind of test to make sure I'm aware of my surroundings, and the car puts on the brakes as well to keep a distance. And so I slow down to well under 50% of the speed limit, and the car does the same. And then eventually cars are behind, so they have to come back up, and then they get in the turning lane to kind of avoid getting close to me. After that point, I was very frustrated and disturbed, and I went to file a police report to state as much, just to memorialize this, just in case further acts, were to happen, that this was documented.
And were you able to identify the driver of the car?
I was able to see the face, but I can't say that, that I could see his face clearly. But to me, it was pretty obvious what was going on.
Friendly.
Okay. And how are you aware that that's the same car that Mr. drives?
Because I've seen his vehicle. I know what he drives.
Okay. And had you, I guess, while Mr. and Mrs. Morgan were married, were you friendly with, at the time, both of them?
No, I'd never particularly interacted with Mr. Morgan throughout any of this prior to, car trackers being put on my car and, these incidents.
Okay. And on or about, what was the date when you did find this tracker on your vehicle?
That would have been October of 2021.
Okay. And then on or about the date, what would be the date that that you noticed being followed by someone that resembled Mr. Morgan?
January 2022.
January
2022.
Okay. And prior to you being to recognize the car behind you, who was in the car with you?
Hey, Mayor. Hey, Matt.
Christine Morgan.
Okay.
Oh, Matt.
And is it possible that car was tracking you while Miss Morgan was in the car with you?
Objection, speculative.
I don't know the answer.
Whether he knew why the person was following this vehicle is beyond this witness's knowledge.
Okay, so it was a factual, is it possible, that question. I'm going to overrule the objection and let him ask that question.
Oh.
And obviously the answer goes to wait.
Yeah, do you believe that Mr. Morgan was following you at the time that Miss Morgan was in the car with you?
Objection. I'm gonna object to speculation to that specific question, which was asked very differently than what the court just reiterated. Right now he just asked, do you know that if Mr. Morgan was following Miss Morgan during that incident? That's what was just asked right now.
So his question was actually, do you believe that the defendant was following him while she was in the car with him? I believe. So what is your objection to that question?
Uh-oh.
I guess I don't have
the question I asked is not speculative, Judge.
Hold on, let him finish. Go ahead, Mr. Shaw.
I withdraw my objection to speculation in that case, Judge.
Yeah.
However, this
That's
witness,
embarrassing.
Good call.
I think it's
Good
also,
call.
I think the objection now is facts not in evidence. There's presumption of facts in this question that aren't in evidence, where this witness has specifically said that he did not clearly see Mr. Morgan's face in the vehicle that was following him. And so for Mr. Spiesman to ask, do you believe that Mr. Morgan was... That's my objection.
Okay, I'm going to overrule the objection and let him ask that. Again, I'm hearing what the testimony is. If things are mischaracterized or misphrased, I'm taking extensive notes.
Understood.
And I will weigh the evidence as appropriate. Mr. Spiesman, you may ask your question again.
I'll make it so simple. Was Mr. Morgan following you and Miss Morgan while she was in the car?
I believe so.
Nothing further, Judge.
Thank you,
Mr. Shaw,
Rose.
you may cross.
Rose. Are you sleeping with Miss Morgan?
Please ask that. It needs to be asked.
That's got to be the question, right?
Define friendly.
Actually, I don't have any questions for this witness.
Oh, come
May this witness be excused?
Yes, Judge.
All right, thank you, sir.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Mr. Spiesman, do you have any other witnesses?
He
Miss
shook.
Morgan, Judge.
All right. You may swear her in.
You can remain in if you like. You're done. I can, Judge. I'm going to let Mr. Ratter remain in the office now that he's testified.
I'm going to ask every different way, every question I could
Yes.
about
Ms.
the
Morgan,
relationship.
do you swear and affirm the testimony you provide to this court will be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
His
under
failed
penalty of perjury?
objection
I swear.
rocked him,
Okay,
I
you're gonna
think.
speak up just a little bit so the court can pick up
I think you're right. He's a
your
little shook.
very quiet voice. Can you please state your name for the court reporter? And I don't think you need to spell
You have a
Christine
very
Morgan.
soft, sexy
it. Thank you, Ms.
voice.
Morgan.
I would like for her to spell it, please.
No problem.
Good
Go
point.
ahead.
You could be. you could open up to
CHRISTINE
things that you don't.
Morgan
Wow, it's a good point,
MORGAN.
Riggs.
All right. Ms. Morgan, did you swear out a ex parte against your ex-husband, Mr. Morgan?
Yes,
And did you secure a 12-month order against Mr. Morgan?
yes.
Briefly, can you share with this court what caused you to swear out that order?
Yes, I have been living in constant fear. We were married for 11 years. Our
long
background
time.
is very quick. We don't have divorce. We just deal with whatever we can deal with. Women are minorities. We don't have voice. We can't speak up. We can't even ask about our rights. It has been a very abusive relationship. I used to get beaten up. I used to get thrown out of the house with little clothes. He used to drag me on the stairs. I used to have bruises all over my body.
Objection, Judge. Relevance, and I mean, we can, as your court said initially, that we can give a general background of what the relationship was in the 12-month period, but getting into specifics and was already the basis of the 12-month protective order and rehashing and reiterating all of that in the exact specifics is beyond this hearing.
Thank you, Heather.
So
Excellent
I
decision.
think she was giving a general background. I'm going to overrule the objection at this
Sounds like
time.
a me, but what do I
Let her
know?
give the general background, which would go to the reasonable likelihood of future acts of violence, given the history of the parties. Obviously, we will not go into each incident in extreme detail because that was already heard at the 12-month hearing. But I will allow her to answer this question and give a general background. Go ahead, Mr. Spiesman. You may readdress your client.
Yeah, if you can just continue just outlining to the judge, the history of violence and stalking that occurred in your marriage with Mr. Morgan without being detailed about each incident.
Sure. Just one particular incident in 2019, Mr. Morgan abused me physically and scratched me, beat me up, and pretty much put the gun in my head. And during this time, I ran and I had to get the police involved. After this incident, again, my culture, my background, I forgive Mr. Morgan, and we went through counseling, and I tried to work with him on our issues and our marriage. The abuses started to get more and more violent to the point I couldn't take it until the last incident between us before the divorce. It was in September 29, 2021. Right after that, I found out, right after the divorce, I filed for an order of protection because I found out that Mr. Morgan was spying on me, having access to my devices, stalking me through electronics. And then within the 30 days temporary order of protection that was in place, I hired a private investigator to come swap the house because there is certain type of stuff. It's indicated that he knows too much about me, which is I had no clue how he would be able to tell about conversation between me, my mother, or me and anybody. The private investigator found out there is devices, a smoke detective device, looks like a smoke detective device in my bedroom that was taking audio and video recording, and the device was active. And also they found out another car tracker that was in my car, and the car tracker was
the tracker's
active.
one thing,
and I have all the proof that I can
Video
provide
in
to the
her
court that car tracker was purchased from a hidden account by Mr. Morgan, and the device was still active even though within the 30 days temporary order of protection was in place. Right after that, I was living in constant fear because I couldn't believe myself. I couldn't believe my beloved husband would do such a thing, even though I gave him chances and I tried to work on the marriage. I was just living in constant fear and going to work, shaking, looking over my shoulder. And then I found out that he was hiring a private investigator, which is I have the report. I have everything that I can provide it to the court. Later on, I found out that Mr. Morgan,
hold on, was there
his promises
one moment.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Shaw, do you have an objection?
Yes, Judge, just renewing my objection from earlier. I mean, there's supposed to be a general brief background of the relationship.
So I think she's going forward in time is what I'm hearing. Okay. And so we are getting to the time of the ex parte order and the TPO order is what I heard. So I am going to overrule the objection and let her continue per Mr. Spiceman's questions at this point.
You can't let go, boy. You can't let go.
In March 2022, I found out that that Mr. Morgan fulfilled his threat that he threatened me before we were divorced. That threat happened on May 16, 2021. We were in a fight and Mr. Morgan threatened me that he will kill my dad. Basically, he said, I'm very intelligent, how I'm gonna kill him. Your dad, only 30% of his heart is working. And any bad news that can get him into a panic attack, and then that will kill him. And I know your good relationship with your father. A small letter to the Social Security Department, they will stop his benefits, and that basically will kill him. Surely enough, Mr. Morgan fulfilled his threat, and it happened in March 2022 that my father received a letter from the Social Security saying you are under investigation, we're putting all of the benefit on hold until further investigation.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. Damn. What was the time frame? Over what time frame did he commit these multiple acts of violence against you? Do you have any idea? Like what years? 2015, 20, 16 to 21. What was the time frame?
2019, 2020, 2021, 2022.
Okay.
All of that. It mainly started prior to that in 2016, but it started to be serious in 2019 when he threatened that he will kill me, and he pretty much pulled a gun. Okay. And then I had to get the police involved because this is abnormal. This needs to stop.
Okay.
Yikes is right.
You're fine. Go slow. And so how many different occasions did he commit any type of act of violence on you?
Over
1, 10?
30. It's pretty much not a single month will pass without him putting his hand on me.
Okay.
Damn.
And so eventually you found the courage to swear out a protective order and get divorced. And then the next aspect you testified to is that you found some devices that were monitoring you. Where did you find those devices exactly?
Judge,
we've gone through all the background. We've gotten a general understanding of the relationship. We've covered what the court has allowed the petitioner to cover And now we're getting further into the specifics of each incident. The petitioner has gone into detail with individual incidents, and now
That was
it's
Judge,
now
you
it's
Mr.
completely irrelevant to this hearing.
Okay, it's not completely irrelevant, but Mr. Spiesman, what is your response?
She found the trackers after she swore out the ex parte. It's absolutely relevant. If Mr. Shaw would let her finish a question before he objects,
Okay.
we get through this.
So I understand this is still something that would have been considered at the 12-month hearing. I will allow this question as to the specifics and what was found where, but then we're going to keep going forward. So I'm going to overrule the objection at this point.
Did you find any, so where exactly did you find these video and audio recording devices?
in my bedroom where it's a private area, and this is where I start the collapse.
Okay, and did you find them after you swore out the initial order?
The 30 days temporary, yes.
Okay, got it.
And I do have the report, with a private investigator. Send it to the court.
Okay, has Mr. Morgan been arrested related to the acts of violence against you?
Yes,
Has Mr. Morgan been arrested related to the unlawful surveillance against you?
yes,
You've been
No.
arrested more than once where you are the victim of his crimes?
yes.
Okay, are those cases still pending?
Two of them is still pending, and one happened in 2019 that I
Because she
had
did say she had to call the
giving him
cops.
chances.
Yeah.
Okay.
Didn't say you got arrested or anything.
So
Wow.
prior to these occurring, he
The
was
blessing.
also arrested and charged with domestic violence?
Correct.
And so it's your testimony, he's been arrested on 2 separate occasions for domestic violence?
Objection asked and answered multiple times, and
No, not asking.
Hold on. No, we're not, please no back and forth, guys.
Fighting.
So
We're doing so good.
this has not been asked and answered. I will allow him to ask this question. I'm going to overrule the objection.
Thank you. So I think the question was, so how many times has he been arrested for domestic violence against you?
Twice.
Thank you, Matt.
Right. And then how many times has he been arrested in total against you? Well, you're the victim.
3 times.
All right. And how many of those cases still remain pending today?
2.
All right. After you got a 12-month order against Mr. Morgan, did he do anything that led you, did he do anything or take any action that led you to feel reasonable apprehension of harm or any type of danger?
Yes.
Okay, tell the court what he did.
Okay. Other than the tracking and other than he fulfilling his threat by sending the letter to my dad, I found out log into my social media and log into the DMV. Nobody have access to my social security or my driving
DMV?
license or any information
Wow, this
except for
dude.
Mr. Morgan. Mr. Morgan refused to give me my car title and the car key bear the 12 months order of protection.
Okay, stop there. Let me just take these one at a time, okay? All right? Let's
She's
talk
hype.
about that.
It's real
So
hype.
you're saying that he withheld items from you that you needed.
Correct.
What did he withhold from you?
My car key, the car title, my passport, and my legal paperwork as I am US citizen, and he refused to return it. And
Okay, hold on. How were those awarded? Like, who told him he had to get those back?
his divorce attorney, after I already sent the 12 months order of protection saying this is by the court order, and then it took him minimum of 5 months to return anything.
So after the ex parte order was granted, did you request anything to be returned to you?
Yes, and I went to the sheriff office to help me.
Hold on.
What is the objection?
the objection is relevance. Protective orders are for acts of either stalking or for family violence. Non-compliance with divorce proceedings or from other orders have nothing to do with a petition for a protective order where she's claiming it's just not relevant for this hearing.
Shows his POS though.
Car title or car keys.
Very
or
much so.
passports. And that goes. It doesn't go to.
It's showing.
Yeah, it shows a
Mr.
lot.
Spiesman?
He's
Further
doing everything he
manipulation,
can
Judge.
to
I mean,
control
as Your
her.
Honor, and this court knows, the act of stalking and controlling an individual is done through a number of different ways. Some being very active, like beating them.
There you go.
Some very passive, like withholding important documents. It's a control issue, Judge. And so after she gets the permanent order, he's required to return items that he doesn't return for 5 months. That shows the continued perpetuation of this behavior that we're trying to stop. The unnecessary tracking, control, and manipulation. All indicators of domestic violence.
100%.
Judge, that is not the definition.
Please don't talk over each other.
With arrests.
I'm sorry, Judge.
Keep in mind, with arrests.
Yeah.
Not one, but two.
So
Judge,
the
if I may
relationship.
now.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, the definition of stalking under 16590 is follows, places under surveillance for contacts. It's not manipulation. It's not returning passports and car keys. That's not what stalking is. That's not what the basis of a protective order is.
Yeah.
So the court is aware of that. The court is also aware that the relationship of the parties and whether a party complies with court orders is relevant to my consideration in this case, and whether an order is necessary going forward. So I'm going to overrule that objection and allow you to continue. Obviously, the divorce case is collateral to this, and I will give things weight accordingly. I'm only looking to find acts of family violence, but evidence related to the parties and their history is relevant.
Yeah.
So I'm going to overrule the objection, allow him to ask that question.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Judge. And but so I'm clear, it's your testimony that part of the court's 12-month order was to return certain items.
Correct.
And what items did Mr. Morgan fail to return to you in a timely manner from that 12-month order?
My car key, the garage key, being away from the house, and all of those stuff, he was holding them.
And is it your understanding that the judge in the 12-month ordered the return of your car keys?
Yes.
Is it your understanding that the judge in the 12-month ordered the return of your passport and other sensitive documentation?
Yes.
And how long exactly after that order issued, more or less, did it take Mr. Morgan to actually return them?
Like 5 months, more than,
Okay.
give or take.
Did you ask for them
Yes.
sooner than those 5 months?
Yes.
Okay. And how did it make you feel that he wouldn't return those documents to you?
Awful. I don't have any identification. On the top of that, he took all my jewelry and everything, and I can't get a hold of any of my stuff, and he denied that he took anything.
Did withholding your passport prevent you from traveling and moving about freely?
Yes, I had already a trip was planned, and he heard me over the recording devices that I am booking the ticket and I'm traveling as I normally travel every holidays. And during this time, I wasn't able to travel because I didn't have my passport, and I had to cancel my trip, and I stayed home crying.
After the 12-month order, what other things did Mr. Morgan do to harass you or threaten you or leave you concerned that you were going to be injured?
Electronics. I hired somebody to scan my phone. I had to switch phones. I believe he had access through my social media. I hired somebody to look through it and write me a report. I received the emails from the DMV that somebody used my identity to log in for my car vehicle, and that happened in June. I went and I did police report on a couple of occasions that I'm getting emails that there is an attempt to log in on my iCloud, and nobody had access to my iCloud. And I found out actually that my iCloud, I don't have the password for it. It was syncing to an email related to Mr. Morgan.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So you just testified that you learned that someone had access to your iCloud.
Correct.
And then you just testified that you were able to verify the email associated with the access.
Correct.
And what was the exact email address?
It was Mr. Morgan email address that I didn't know how to answer the secure question to undo linking my iCloud to his email address. So I answered all of the secure question, and then the answers weren't correct, and I wasn't able to get access to my iCloud, my information.
And did you ever, were you ever able to confirm by trying to log in specifically what the email address was that had access?
I had a screenshot, and then I took the phone to a forensic accountant for him to scan it, and then he advised me to do everything from scratch. And it does have which is Mr. Morgan email, all of them.
So you were your testimony, you were able to identify the email that accessed your iCloud account as one associated.
He won't give up on her.
Correct.
Was it an email address that you're familiar with?
No,
Mr. Morgan?
no. Mr. Morgan had over 20 emails, 30 emails. Some of our fights that I will be asking a question why he's trying to hide the stuff from me when I'm not a technology person or sophisticated with IT, but Mr. Morgan is.
Okay. And then you indicated that someone had accessed your
He's up to no
DDS
good,
account.
Matt.
Yes.
I mean, to be fair, how are you to know that it was Mr. Morgan?
He is the only person having access to my driving license number, my social security, and my private information. Nobody else have access to any of the information except Mr. Morgan. Mr. Morgan is the one who used to register the car and to do all of those electronic stuff. I had no idea how to do any of that stuff before.
Okay, all right. And you were able to capture a screenshot indicating
Yes,
that
and I
you were-
went and I did a police report.
Okay, all right. In addition to that, what else did Mr. Morgan do after issuance of the permanent order that lead you to feel concerned?
Well, I have been hearing from friends about conversations, and I have been hearing a threat that Mr. Morgan
I don't think they
say
do.
about me. She's like a
haven't
chihuahua.
said
She's
it.
just gonna keep talking too much without doing anything. Let
Objection,
her
you're
dig
saying.
her grave by herself.
Hold on 1 second, Morgan, okay?
All right, there's a hearsay objection on the table.
And I think it was that she was testifying to what Mr. Morgan told other people.
I-
Is that what your understanding was, Judge?
Yes, but unless they were told in her
It would-
presence or to her,
But no, I agree. I understand, Judge.
I'm gonna have to sustain the hearsay objection on that one.
You just, Ms. Morgan, you can only testify to things that you heard, okay?
Sure.
All right. And there was an incident with a conversation occurred between Mr. Morgan and your brother. Did Mr. Morgan share, I'm sorry, did your brother share that information with you?
Yes.
And the conversation was that Mr. Morgan basically threatened to put you in.
Objection, leading, and hearsay.
Well, first of all, I
Go
mean,
ahead, Mr. Scheisman.
Mr. Awad testified to this, so it's not an out of court declarant, so it's not hearsay. And I can ask a non-leading question by making a statement and then asking a non-leading question.
Okay, I'm going to overrule the objection as to hearsay since the declarant has already been sworn and available to testify. I am going to sustain the objection as far as leading, and you may ask it in whichever way you want. Mr.
Do you think
Scheisman.
Morgan testifies?
Did your brother ever share any statements with you that were concerning?
I don't
regarding
think
Mr.
he will.
Morgan?
Yes.
And specifically, what was the most concerning statement that was shared with you?
That he will kill me, as he would threaten before that he will kill me.
All right. And when you received that information,
I believe
how
that.
did it make you feel?
Freaked out, packed my stuff, and went back home because during this time I was in Tennessee. He didn't want to share that on the phone. I felt not safe. I started to cry. I started to shake, and I packed my stuff and I left.
So you were, you said you were in Tennessee. What were you doing in Tennessee at the time that your brother shared this with you?
Visiting my parents. My mom is very sick. She had breast cancer, and I was visiting her because she was in the hospital.
And how long did you intend to stay before you learned of this statement?
I was intending to stay for a week. I just stayed for one night and I left.
And why did you vacate Tennessee and come back to Atlanta after you heard that statement?
Because I was scared. I don't want to be around somebody who wanted to take my life away.
Okay, since you've received that that protective order, is there anything else that Mr. Morgan has done to concern you to the extent you filed for a permanent?
Yes, I am just living in constant fear. And if there is no order in place, I feel that Mr. Morgan, he's a very revenge person and he wait for the right moment to take his revenge back. And if I don't have extra layer of protection, I don't feel safe.
Non-responsive. The question was, what has Mr. Morgan done when if there's been any other incidents, and the witness is testifying as to how she personally just feels.
Judge Spiceman?
So non-responsive, Judge, means that my client is not responding to the question that's asked. She's responding. It feels to me that every time we procure evidence that's valuable to our case, Mr. Shaw objects and effectively argues some sort of irrelevant objection, like non-responsive. My own client is answering this question. I don't understand what this objection is.
All right. I think it's responsive and relevant to her fear and why she's asking for the extension of the order. So I'm going to overrule the objection as her feelings are relevant. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Are you scared of Mr. Morgan?
Definitely.
Over the past 6 years or 7 years of this violence and stalking, has your fear increased or decreased?
Increased very much.
After getting a 12-month order, did you feel as if you were going to be safe from his continued threat and manipulation?
Yes.
Has that been the case?
Right now, I'm scared if I lose my order of protection because I know for a fact that Mr. Morgan not gonna leave me alone unless there is a court order and extra layer of protection to keep him away.
How many occasions did you attempt?
Raggle monkey.
How many times did you attempt to serve him with this order? How many times?
Over 5 times. Each time of them when I filed, they went and the sheriff office went to serve him 2 to 3 times each. So 5 times 3, 15 times.
And did you make contact with his lawyer related to asking service?
Yes.
And how much money did you spend in an attempt to try to get him served with his PPO?
Over $5,500.
Is that just for service?
Just for service, not including the private processor or the private investigator.
And why did you spend that much money and attempt this many times to serve Mr. Morgan?
Because I'm scared.
That was
Do
a
you fear
big
that
thing
if this court
that
does
they were
not
talking about
extend this
earlier,
for 3
how he
years
hadn't
to
been
life,
served yet,
that
but he'd
he
been
will
dodging them
continue
intentionally.
his harassment and violence to you?
Absolutely.
When you travel to Tennessee, does it scare you to be close to him?
Very much. I pray. And the issue here that his family live across the street from my family, so there is no way I can avoid
He lives across the
being
street from our
around because
family.
they live a block away.
Oh my God.
I have nothing further, Judge.
Did she just say that he lives a block away from her family?
His family live a block
His-
away
his-
from my family.
His
His
family,
parents.
yes, so
Okay.
Judge, his family lives a block away, so the parents live a block
Oh, thank you.
away. But Mr. Morgan does not live a block away from Miss Morgan's parents.
Okay, so their families live a block away from each other.
Right.
Correct.
All right, all right. Mr. Shaw, you may cross.
Thank you, Judge.
All right.
Miss Morgan, you now live in Atlanta, right?
Yes,
And you've been living in Atlanta for quite some time,
correct.
right? Okay. Now you know that Mr. Morgan lives in Nashville, Tennessee, right?
Correct.
You know that he's been living in Nashville, Tennessee for quite some time now.
Apparently.
You know that.
I didn't know that. I had to hire somebody to figure out where is he so we can serve him.
You knew that from your divorce proceedings that he's been living in Nashville, Tennessee, right?
Incorrect. I have proof that I sent an email and a text message to the mediator asking about his address. And the mediator said that Mr. Morgan not gonna give the information and bear the divorce agreement that say if Mr. Morgan were to change his address, he should notify me within 30 days. I never was notified.
Run.
Mr. Morgan claimed that he lives with his mother, and that's the only address that he provided, and he refused to give any other addresses. And Mr. Morgan, on a legal paperwork, he still have his address on my home address right now, who he is no longer live and haven't been there for over a year.
What?
I didn't understand the last thing that you just said.
He forgot to put a change of
He's been
address in.
what with your address?
Like his legal, some of the legal paperwork, he still have my home address in Atlanta.
Some of the legal paperwork has
Correct.
your address in Atlanta.
Correct.
Okay. And some of the paperwork doesn't, right?
Correct, his mother address, but I have no idea where exactly his own address. That's the only information I have. So I have no idea. Let me just stop you right there. I have no idea if he was living in Tennessee or he's still working in Atlanta and going to the weekend in Tennessee as he normally used to do.
She's taking control.
You know
of
that
it.
he lives in Nashville, Tennessee now.
Apparently, yes. After I hired private investigators to give me information.
And you know that he goes to an Egyptian church in Nashville, Tennessee, right?
Yes.
He goes to St. Verena America Coptic Church.
Sure.
Right? You know that?
Yeah. Yeah, there are so many churches. Yes.
And there's like you said, there are a lot of churches in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yes, the closest to two is the two that we used to go when we were together. It's called the St. Verena and St. Mina.
Right. And this is the one that I just spoke about. That's a fairly newer church.
Not sure when it was built.
But it wasn't there when you guys were younger, correct?
It was there. When
This
we
church
used
that I
to
just
visit,
spoke about,
when we
it's built.
used to visit the family.
Good spot to jump in,
It's
Justin.
there. It's not necessarily the church that we used to go all the time because we were living here, but the church was there when we used to visit the family.
which is less than 5 years ago, right?
I am not sure honestly when it was built.
But you wouldn't say that it's been around for decades, right?
I answered the question, I guess.
Okay. But regardless, you went to that
I
church,
like her.
right?
Yes, this is the same church that my brother goes to.
And you know that Mr. Morgan goes to that church.
I have no idea where Mr. Morgan go
how's
right
she
now
gonna
or
know
what
he's
he does.
going
If I
to
know,
that
I could have
church?
sent the private processor to serve him.
Isn't that where the private processor was sent to that church to serve
No, it
him?
was not. No, it was not. Your information is incorrect. I can send you proof where they were serving him. It was not in this church.
You're telling me that the private processor did not serve Mr. Morgan at the Verena America
Correct.
Coptic Church?
Mr. Morgan was not serving St. Verena Church.
Okay, but you know that he goes to that church.
Judge, this has been asked and answered, I think, like 7 times.
She does now.
No, it hasn't. Not 7 times, Judge.
So
Maybe
it
6.
has, it has been asked a few times.
Over talking. I'm sorry, Judge.
Yes.
It's
I
getting
agree.
difficult.
I agree with the court reporter. Please don't respond directly to each other and don't talk over each other. I know everyone's very invested and this is a long day. But I do believe this question has been asked several times specifically. So she said she knew him to go to this church. So I'm going to sustain the objection to that question.
Yes, Judge.
So they're trying
Ms.
to
Morgan, like I
build
said,
that
you went to
she
this church
intentionally
on
went to
November
his
27,
church knowing it was
2022?
his church.
No, I did not. I have proof I was outside the country.
On November 27, 2022, you did not go to this church?
I did not. I have proof that I was outside the country.
I thought
So
she
if there's
couldn't
an
travel. He
eyewitness
has her.
that Mr. Morgan
Took her
called
5 months to get it.
in this
Oh, she
hearing
got it
and
back.
says
All
that
right.
you
I
were
missed that
seen
part.
at that church. What would you say to that?
Hold on, Judge. Hold on, Judge. I would object. If there is an eyewitness, that's one thing. If not, Mr. Shaw has a rule of candor. He's misleading and misrepresenting this. She was out of country, I'll tell you right now, because I saw the picture, but nonetheless, Judge, that is an issue of candor right there.
It's a good faith basis issue, Judge, and I do
Well,
have.
if he's a witness, Judge, it's good faith. If he doesn't, he's lying.
Yeah, well, it's a good faith basis if it is, and I generally try to resolve any issues that someone is proceeding in that manner. I do think it is not a proper question to ask if
You
that
think he's
person
really got a
would be
witness, or is he
lying
just
if
like
they said this.
baiting her to say
But there is
yes,
a way to
I was there.
legally ask
And what
that
does
question.
it matter?
So I'm going to overrule the objection, but I need
The
to hear what
lawyer
the question
versus
is
lawyer part
again.
of this is.
And that objection may or may
I
not
think
be
it would
renewed
build
or another
towards the
objection, I
fact
don't
that
know. But
she
just
isn't
ask
as scared
the
of him as
question
she's claiming
again,
if she would
please,
go to
Mr.
a
Shaw.
church where he's
Yes,
at.
Judge.
Right.
What I asked
knowingly.
was, if an eyewitness said that he saw you at that church on that day.
Judge testifying. He's testifying, and that's testifying to hearsay. If an eyewitness said
I hope I'm testifying, Judge. This is cross.
Okay, well, so stop. Okay, so he has a right to a thorough and sifting cross-examination. You do not have a right to testify, but you have a right to ask leading questions and to explore the facts. So I'm going to overrule the objection and let this question be asked. But I need to hear what the question is.
Judge, what I asked was if an eyewitness saw you at that church on November 27th, 2022, what would you say to that? That was the question I asked. At this point, I'm just ready to move on to my next question.
I'm going to let you ask that question, and she may answer it however she wishes to, and whatever weight should be given to it is a matter for me to decide later.
I'd say prove it.
So ask her that question.
Judge, I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna withdraw the question. I'm gonna move on.
Okay. All right.
No witness.
Miss Morgan, I want to ask you about January 29th, 2023. On that date, you went to that church, right?
I am not sure. I actually have to look at my calendar to see.
So you would not contest with me if I told you that you went to that church on that day?
I answered the question. I have to see where I was in that day.
Okay, let me ask you this. March 5th, the upcoming March 5th, you're planning to go to that church, right?
March 5th?
Yes.
This March 5th.
Yes, this March 5th, you're planning to go to that church again?
Impossible.
Hold on. So today's March 8th.
Oh, I'm sorry, Judge. I think they meant March.
I'm like, a year out from now? She's already making plans? I'm like, what universe are we in?
This weekend, you're planning to go to that church?
Judge, I would just object as relevant. Like, if this is a church she goes to, we're somehow considering evidence that she might go to a church.
How does he know she's got plans to go to the church? How does he know that?
So, Mr. Shaw, what is your response? I have a hard time understanding the relevance of what church she might go to in the future as whether your client has committed acts of family violence against her that would warrant extension of the TPO.
Judge, this is good. This is
the time traveler's
that she's not afraid of Mr. Morgan. She actually is. She lives here in Atlanta. She travels all the way to Nashville, Tennessee, knowing that he goes to that church. She's been going to that church, knowing that he goes there. And then I have some follow-up questions where she's getting treatment from the same therapist at that same church, knowing that Mr. Morgan is in Nashville, Tennessee. And there's multiple other churches that I have some questions about that, where there's other Egyptian churches here in Atlanta
Briggs, you still think
and in
he's a good
Nashville,
lawyer?
Tennessee, yet she chooses to go to that specific church, knowing that Mr. Morgan also uses the same therapist at that same church.
This is all getting into testimony.
That was the relevance.
So as far as it goes to her having fear of him and going to church, I will allow you, I'm going to overrule the objection for now and allow you to ask a few questions about that in relation to her being afraid of him. And I will give that whatever weight it may or may not warrant.
Her judge, her attorney.
I'm going to allow you, and I do have some concerns of you asking her where.
I don't blame him.
She's going to be when, given that there has been the no contact order that's currently in place in 2 criminal cases, as well as the TPO. So I would ask you not ask her where she's going to be in the future at this time, but ask her generally about her attendance at church. I'll allow you to ask a few of those questions.
Absolutely, Judge. And this isn't to seek out information or to, undermine any of the protective orders or that sort of stuff.
Sounds like you got plenty of information already.
I have good faith basis for all these questions. And so, Ms. Morgan, there are at least 3 Egyptian churches here in Atlanta.
Don't blame them.
Counting them.
Relevance, Judge, that they live in. He lives in Tennessee. What does it matter how many churches are in Atlanta?
Mr. Shaw.
Again, the point is that there are several churches here in Atlanta. There are several churches between here and Nashville. There are several churches in Nashville. They're all Egyptian churches, the types of churches that these parties go to. And instead of going to any of those churches, she specifically chooses to go to the church that he goes to.
With her
Why don't
family.
you just
Yeah,
answer
because
that
her family
question?
lives there.
Um,
We've already established her brother and her family
and
go
then
there.
she can answer it, and then we can move on.
Very quickly, Judge,
because
very
then-
fair today, I feel.
Just go ahead.
Extremely fair today.
She got on the news, so now she's,
So,
you know,
Ms.
better move.
Morgan, instead of going to any of the other Egyptian churches, Ms. Morgan, you're on mute.
I can hear you.
Just ask questions here.
Oh, I see. Okay. So, Ms. Morgan, instead of going to the several other Egyptian churches here in Atlanta, all the numerous other churches that you indicated are in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm sure there's several other Egyptian churches between here and Nashville, Tennessee. You specifically choose to drive from here to Nashville, Tennessee, to the exact same church that Mr. Morgan goes to, and attend those churches, attend that specific church in Nashville, Tennessee.
What's the question?
Isn't that correct?
It's incorrect.
You don't go to that specific church that I just indicated?
I go to
Verena, St. Verena America Coptic Church. You don't go to that church?
I go occasionally when I visit family member.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was asking.
He tried to make that sound like every weekend she's
Right.
going out of her way to
You
go to
claimed
Tennessee
that
to
there
go to
was
church.
family violence with Mr. Morgan, that he committed family violence against you on September 29th, 2021.
Correct.
You filed a private warrant application for that, right?
Correct.
You filed it in March of 2022?
No.
You didn't file it in March of 2022?
No.
You didn't file the private warrant application for the one incident of family violence against Mr. Morgan in March of 2022?
It was not in March.
When was it?
It was right after the incident. It just the police officer take their investigation to see if the person is guilty or not guilty, and then they transfer the case to issue the private warrant. But I
Okay.
filed it way before that. It just the court to take its time to go through the investigation to make sure the party is guilty.
So when you first called the police with regard to that incident, the judge basically declined to issue the warrant, right?
Objection, Your Honor. That calls for speculation and a legal conclusion. She would have no clue as to whether or not. Just let me finish. Judge, she would have no clue whether or not a judge granted a warrant or didn't grant a warrant. And you're asking to make a conclusion of law.
Judge, she's the party in the case. She would know if a police officer was able to get a warrant or not for a complaint that she made.
So
Very. Anthony,
police
very.
officer, and whether they seek warrants or don't seek warrants, are not always in the presence of a petitioner or a alleged victim. And so she can testify if she knows if the officer sought a warrant, but a warrant's been issued, correct?
Yes, and he was
Yes,
arrested on, Judge. So
Okay.
it's kind of a moot point.
So you can ask her if she knows if the officer sought a warrant at the time she reported it,
matter?
but unless she was
He was
present with him and
arrested.
walked with him anywhere, I don't know that she has knowledge of anything beyond that.
Understood, Judge. So Ms.
You
Morgan,
can
when
ask
you
your
first-
question with those parameters in mind. So I will
Yes,
sustain the objection as to speculation and just ask what she is aware of.
So with that incident, you called the police, correct?
Correct.
And when you call the police said that they will try to seek out a warrant for it, right?
Objection, Your Honor. That calls for hearsay. And the other thing, Judge, this all occurred prior to the granting of the 12-month. He would be arrested for ag stalking if that's what occurred after. So again, I don't know what we're traversing here. It's been identified what he's been arrested
Thank you
for.
so
We
much.
got a 12-month order, and now we're just going back to somehow discredit my client.
So he does, hold on, he does have her on cross. We did go into the background. I will allow this one question about that, but it is hearsay as to what an officer told her. So I will sustain the objection as far as hearsay about
Try
what
to get
someone
something to
else has
stick at the
told
wall,
her.
so.
Unless she physically walked with him somewhere and she observed a warrant, it's going to be a hearsay sustained.
Okay. So, Ms. Morgan, you weren't able to get an actual warrant against Mr. Morgan until March of 2022.
I honestly have
You know
no
that.
idea. I honestly have no idea how is the paperwork work. All I have done, I filed for the abuse, and then the court take the process to investigate and to do whatever need to be done. I have no idea when they issue it. I had no idea what is the process. I am not a lawyer. All I know, I just filed.
Okay. You know that he wasn't arrested for your the allegations you made were in September 2029, 2021, and he wasn't arrested for that until March of 2022 or thereafter. You know that.
They communicated with me right after to let me know and to ask me if I wanted to attend. That's all I am aware of. I have no idea what the paperwork, how it did work, what is the process, what was the investigation. The sheriff officer, they don't give you all the detailed information behind the scene, what they do in their investigation.
Perfect answer, even if she knows. Perfect answer. Perfect.
Yeah.
You're not claiming that there's been any family violence or any violence from Mr. Morgan since that date, correct?
I'm sorry, what is the question?
Since September 2021, there has not been any family violence from Mr. Morgan.
Judge, again.
He doesn't have to hit her to be,
I'd object,
you know,
Judge. That
doing
is
crazy stuff.
a question to determine by the court, so it goes to the ultimate issue. And the other piece to it is, Judge, is that family violence is a number of different things. It does not require someone punching you in the face. Simple assault, family violence. Stalking is family violence. All of these things can be considered family violence. So that is an ultimate issue that needs to be determined by the court and not interpreted by my client, who's not a judge or a lawyer.
First of all, Judge, no, stalking and those are not family violences. But I can rephrase my question so that it doesn't include the phrase family violence. I can just say violence per se.
She's getting frustrated.
She is, yeah.
Normal common sense, terminology.
Common sense.
Yeah, the specific acts of family violence are defined in the statute, and that's what the court will be considering. And that is my determination based on the evidence I've heard when I make that determination. So yes, you can limit it to violence and not family violence as legally defined.
Ms. Morgan, you're not claiming that Mr. Morgan has ever been violent against you since September 29, 2021, correct?
I am very confused on what you consider violence.
Oh my God.
So I'm going to need to not
That was
have
rude.
the reactions.
I'm sorry, Judge.
I would ask that there not be any
Sex bots are back.
reactionary commentary.
I'm sorry.
Wow, that was a dick
And I
move.
sincerely do apologize for that.
Judge, this is asked and answered. She actually did testify he threatened to kill her. Okay, that's an act of beyond violence. So she has testified to what has occurred, that Mr. Morgan specifically stated to her brother that he threatened to kill her.
Objection, Judge. I never asked that question, and now Mr. Spice is testifying.
So you asked her about whether there's been any acts of violence since I've even asked the question again so I can assess it again, please.
Judge, my only question to Ms. Morgan that she failed to answer, and then I got frustrated, and I again apologize for that. My question to Ms. Morgan was, since September 29, 2021, there's been no violence against you from Mr. Morgan. That was my question.
Okay, so I'm going to let him ask that question and she can answer it yes, no, or I don't know, or however she sees fit, and explain the answer.
I absolutely say I am under threat, especially after September 29th, after I found out all of the devices and everything that Mr. Morgan have put in place. And I have been living in constant fear. Every night I shake and go 3 times to check on the door to make sure it's closed.
Damn.
Okay, Ms. Morgan, the 12-month protective order in this case was granted in January of 2021. Correct?
They gave me 30 days first, then we had a case in December, and then I received the letter that it was granted since the December 15, 2021.
Correct. That's what I just asked. And my question now to you is, you do have a Ring camera installed at your home?
I do.
And you don't have any recording or any evidence that Mr. Morgan has been recorded on that Ring video camera since January?
My Ring camera.
Ms. Morgan, you have to let me finish my question before you start answering. So since January of 2021, you don't have any recording of Mr. Morgan at your home, correct?
Inside the house. I have no recording. I am not sure what's happening outside the house.
So the answer to my question is no, you do not have any recording of Mr. Morgan being at your home, correct?
Correct.
Now, you also know that Mr. Morgan is under a no contact bond condition?
Yes.
And as far as you know, the prosecutors in that case, they're not seeking to violate him for no contact, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation and completely irrelevant.
I'm asking if she knows.
You can ask her if she knows, but if she does not know, we're not going to go past that.
Understood, Judge.
So I'm going to overrule the question as to relevance. She can ask this question, but that's it on this on what she knows about what the prosecutor's doing in her case.
Yes, Judge. So Ms. Morgan, the prosecutors have been talking to you about the case with Mr. Morgan?
No.
They have not?
No.
Okay. And so they have not told you that they're seeking to violate Mr. Morgan for no contact?
Objection, I would call her to testify to hearsay, Judge. She can't testify to what they told him or what they didn't tell him.
I didn't ask for the content of what was said. I asked.
Yes, you did.
I asked that they have not contacted you, that they're violating Mr. Morgan. They have not done that.
Okay, that would require some message being relayed to her. You can, so I'm going to sustain the objection as to that. You can ask her if she knows if she is aware if they are violating his bond or moving to revoke his bond, and then we're going to stop there.
Okay. So, Ms. Morgan, you're not aware of any action by the prosecutors seeking to violate Mr. Morgan?
No.
Okay. Now, let's talk about some of the social media and
remember, Mr. Morgan still has 2 open cases that haven't been resolved.
That he was arrested on.
Direct.
Mm-hmm.
You claim that Mr. Morgan logged into some of your social media accounts?
Yes.
And you said that you sought out a police report for that?
Correct.
You spoke with the Brookhaven police? Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And the Brookhaven police, obviously, they spoke to you about that, right?
Yes.
And they called you on the phone, right?
They called me and left a message because I was scared and I didn't know what to do. And the police officer told me we're not gonna do anything about the social media or any of that stuff. And they gave me the option to go live in a shelter or get extra layer of protection of having something in place or somebody around me in case if anything would ever happen, I have some sort of protection.
And they also told you that they didn't have enough probable, they specifically said that they don't have enough probable cause.
Objection, Your Honor.
I gotta be able to finish the question.
Okay, hold on. So Ask your question.
Yes, Judge.
Yeah, that's him right there in the
So,
middle.
When the Brookhaven police officers contacted you back, they specifically said that they do not have enough probable cause for them to pursue that case.
Objection,
Okay,
Your
and there's a
Honor.
hearsay objection.
Hearsay.
Mr. Shaw, what is your response?
Judge, so hearsay would be if I was offering it for the truth of the matter asserted. If I'm offering it to actually show that there was not any probable cause for the case, then that would be hearsay. I'm not offering it for that. I'm offering it for the effect on the hearer and for what's the other exception to the hearsay? For the state of mind of the declarant that when the Brookhaven Police Department contacted Ms. Morgan and said that there wasn't enough probable cause, I don't know where I'm going with that, Judge.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Wow.
I guess it is hearsay.
Okay, I'll sustain
Look at the other
hearsay
attorney.
objection.
Look at the other attorney. Justin's like, oh my God, this guy.
Now, Ms. Morgan, you said that you had hired a couple of private investigators, right?
Yes.
You hired one of the investigators that you hired was Hawk.
I'm sorry?
You hired a private investigating company called Hawk.
Hawk.
It depends when exactly are you asking to serve Mr. Morgan or like
At some point you hired a private investigator company called Hawk, right?
I have to look at the reports to give you exactly.
So you don't know?
Of course not.
Okay. But you've hired a private investigating company.
Yes.
Okay. And that investigative company, you said they check on eavesdropping devices, correct?
Correct.
And they also look into digital surveillance, right?
Yeah. I have to pay extra for that.
You have to pay extra for that.
Correct.
And then they would do it.
Yes. But I didn't do it during this time because I didn't have the money.
Okay. So you have no evidence from them showing that Mr. Morgan hacked into you don't have any evidence from any of these investigating companies that it was Mr. Morgan that hacked into your social media accounts. You don't have that.
Well, later on, I hired other people to check my phone and to see what's going on with my iCloud. But not with the same people. The first people were in place. They scanned the house. They found the devices that was audio and video recording, and then they found the car tracker, and everything was still active.
I'm not talking about stuff from before the 12-month TPO was granted. I'm talking about the claims and allegations that you're making that happened after 12-month TPO was granted. After the 12-month TPO was granted, after that, at this point right now, you don't have any evidence to show that it was Mr. Morgan that hacked into any of your social media accounts. Correct?
Well, my iCloud was hacked with Mr. Morgan email address.
Nice, Pamela.
Did you provide that to the Brookhaven Police Department?
Well, I provided to the court, and then they said the case is still under investigation. We can't give you any information. And yes, I did. Yes, to answer your question, yes, it's with Brookhaven Police Report.
And you provided it to them? That's what you're saying?
Yes, I went and I did the police report.
And after that, they told you that they didn't want to pursue the case.
Objection, Your Honor. Again, hearsay.
Mr. Shaw.
I mean, you need the cop to
I'll
testify.
ask a different question, Judge.
Thank you.
I would think. I mean,
there's not.
He should be mad at
a new
himself, no one
criminal
else.
Case against Mr. Morgan for him hacking into your social media. There's not a case for that, correct?
She's trying to get it, Lisa.
I am not sure because the cases is still open and active. One of them is the eavesdropping. The eavesdropping include him hacking and
Again,
stuff.
Ms. Morgan, you have to remember my question.
I
to
can't
you
talk
was-
about
Hold
the
on,
law.
hold
I'm
on,
not
hold on,
sure.
hold on. Please stop talking over each other.
Remember my second question because I screwed it up
Everyone,
first
and
time.
also it's not polite. So
Again, you're being a dick.
Mr.
Mhm.
So first,
said
I
it.
will ask the petitioner to
In a
please
nice way.
answer yes, no, or I don't know, or I can't answer that because, and explain your answer. Mr. Shaw, please re-ask your question.
Yes, Judge. Ms. Morgan, let me direct your attention again to what occurred after the 12-month TPO is granted. Okay? So that is after January 5th of 2022. After January 5th, 2022, there's no new allegations that Mr. Morgan ever, there's no new cases against Mr. Morgan that Mr. Morgan hacked into any of your social media or any of that stuff. There's no new case for that, correct?
I am not sure.
How does that
You're
work
not
when
sure.
you're married?
You're the complainant.
I
You're
don't know.
claiming that he hacked into these things, but you're not sure if there's a new case for that or not.
I am not sure because when I file for everything, the court takes its time and then they file later on as when the abuse happened. It happened in September, but they issued the warrant in March. You asking me on a specific date if anything happened that after this specific date when I have no idea how is the court process work or when the
She's
stuff
turned it all
showing
over
as
to the
active and
police.
open.
She can't
I'm
help
not
that they haven't
asking you if
moved on it
something's
yet or
active
finished their
open.
investigation.
I'm not asking you if something's prolonged. I'm not asking you how long the court proceedings take. I'm not asking you any of those things. I'm simply asking you, there's no new actual case where you're calling the police, where the police is saying, okay, we'll go out and we'll investigate this and we'll get to the bottom of this. You're making a new claim and the court is making, a finding, or the police is investigating and they're looking into it. There's no new allegations of any of that after January 5th, 2022,
After the other two.
after the 12-month protective order is granted, right?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
All that for that.
Yeah. Huge victory.
Okay, great. So he was compliant with his 12
Now,
month.
Ms. Morgan, you were obviously divorced from Mr. Morgan in this case, right?
Correct.
And that divorce was contested, right?
Yes.
You guys went back and forth on a lot of different issues about the divorce, right?
Correct.
You both had lawyers in that divorce.
Yes.
You argued over property, jewelry, and other things.
Like every divorce.
Yes.
Yes.
And you know that by filing a criminal case or even filing a
You did
TPO
divorce.
against Mr. Morgan, you know that helps you in your divorce case.
Objection, Your Honor. So inappropriate of a question. Relevance. Relevance.
Sir, that's something you can argue. But
It goes to
I'm gonna sustain the objection to that question.
yes, Judge. Well, let me ask you this, Ms. Morgan. On August 16, 2021, August 16, 2021, you threatened Mr. Morgan that you would file a TPO against him, right?
Incorrect.
You did not threaten him of that?
No, he threatened me and then I said back, let's see who's gonna file for what. And at this point, I already testified this in the 12 months CPO and I said I had no idea what even the order of protection is. I only knew what order of protection after the abuse has happened and I went to the police officer and they are the one who helped me to file for the order of protection.
Okay. Could I have the clerk pull up Respondent's Exhibit 5? It's an audio recording.
Ooh.
And all of that stuff happened before even the
What-
12 months.
And Judge, if I may, just what are we playing? I don't.
Yeah, so I don't want to, so what, can you say what number it was? And if it's something that you have provided to Mr. Spiesman when I asked y'all to exchange
sure.
stuff in the beginning?
Yes, Judge. So all the exhibits that were provided to the court and to Mr. Spiesman were labeled as exhibit numbers R1,
Oh, no
R2,
doubt, Trixie.
R3. And so this would be respondents
Last one
5.
expired.
And to respond to Mr. Spiesman's
I think that's a level of
concern, this
protection
is
for
to
her, if you will.
impeach Miss Morgan, what she just said right now.
Also keeps
as far as her
pew pews
not
out of his hands.
making a threat of a
If
TPO
there's
against
a-
Mr. Morgan, and
Because
this
this
audio
one is
recording
a permanent
would
TPO that she's trying to get.
contradict that and impeach her testimony.
Not relevant, Judge, to the analysis today. I mean, we're extending a TPO to a PPO. It might have been relevant at the TPO. I would even say that it's probably not relevant then. There's actual violence, certainly not relevant to extend a PPO. We're talking about something that happened 2.5 years ago. We've had an ex parte, we've had a permanent. Now we're on round 2 of the PPO. So I don't see how this would be relevant. I'm sure he threatened a TPO against them. That's what you get when you're the victim of spousal abuse. So the relevance of it.
So this is stuff he's trying to put
Mr.
up
Shaw,
that
do you know if
should have
this was
presented
played
at
at the
the
12-month
very first
hearing?
TPO.
I don't know, Judge.
Yes.
Actually, I don't.
Yes.
It was, Judge. It
Yes.
all was.
So since it was, I'm not
Judge.
going to revisit it.
Judge,
yes.
I need to just respond to the relevance of it. The relevance, well, a witness's credibility and her
Nah.
her
Give it up.
credibility and her contradictory statements to her actual testimony are always relevant. Her bias is always relevant, which was the point of me getting into the divorce and all of that. So if she just now testified to something that is contradictory to what she said earlier in a recording, even if it was played at a prior hearing, shows her lack of credibility that she's lying, and her bias, or I'm sorry, not her bias, but her credibility, a witness's credibility is always relevant.
Okay.
But for the interest of judicial economy, Judge, I'll just move on. I don't need to actually.
Okay.
He's doing us a favor. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much. You're doing us a favor.
You can ask your next question.
Yes, Judge.
What a bunch of gibberish he just said.
Oh, it's bad. It's bad. It's
Morgan's gonna start yelling at him in a minute. He's put a stop payment on the check right now. If you guys would do us a favor, like this video, by the way, I haven't mentioned that lately.
It's been a very interesting case. I'll say that.
Oh, it's definitely been a barn burner.
I feel for her. She seems like an incredibly good witness.
A very good candidate for a permanent TPO, I would think.
I think so.
I've seen nothing that would say to the contrary.
I was going to ask you, like, when you're married, where
you
is
can't
the
hack
line?
into somebody else's stuff. You can't do
That's
that.
what I mean.
No.
Where is that line? I was wondering, obviously after you're divorced and such, that's a whole different thing. But while you're married, it's just, man, it's a crazy one. And, with the lawyers going back and forth as well through this whole thing is a whole added
Petition for the temporary protective order. I think that was
The initial petition.
yes, Judge.
Okay.
And
that
can't
wasn't the
remember
first time
which
he's done that.
exhibit number we had that marked as. I think it was exhibit.
Yeah, she's
Shaw.
on.
Look, Shaw set the
Good
table
mind,
for
and that
this
for a
with
second.
his
I'm sorry, what are we
objections
pulling up?
earlier.
The initial petition. The initial petition.
I would object, Judge. That ship has sailed. A 12-month order has been entered, and we are here for a PPO.
Yes,
Your
I know
Honor.
it's a PPO.
And it is part of the clerk's file. So
Not TPO.
what is it that you are looking to use? What is its relevance to this hearing, sir?
The relevance of it, Judge, was that
Hi, Walter.
there's nothing. Well, I was also going to pull up the petitioner's current motion for the permanent protective order, and I was going to compare the two documents and show that there's nothing new alleged in the permanent protective order that wasn't already alleged in the 12-month protective order. So I also needed to pull up the motion for the permanent protective order, and I was going to go through each item in the motion for the permanent protective order and show that there's nothing alleged in the motion, in the petitioner's motion, that's from prior to.
Okay, so
You ever heard
that's going to be
yourself,
argument.
too?
You can ask her questions about what she is alleged in the order
she was
from
on the
the
news
order,
for
which
it.
is a part of the court's file.
Yes, sure.
Okay.
So Ms. Morgan, you filed the motion for the permanent protective order in this case,
Yes,
and in that motion, you alleged a lot of different things, right?
yes,
You alleged that there was a misdemeanor battery charge against Mr. Morgan, right?
yes,
That misdemeanor battery charge that you alleged in this motion for the permanent protective order, that battery charge was from prior to the 12-month protective order, right?
No, we will at the end.
incorrect.
The misdemeanor battery charge that you alleged in your permanent protective order, that you indicated a case number for that, right?
There was,
Judge, I object to relevance, Your Honor. I mean, we're either re-arguing the TPO, and again, Judge, we've gone through this. There's been finding of facts related to this. If Mr. Shaw's greatest desire is to impeach my client's credibility by saying there's nothing new, well, the court's going to supplement that with a testimony anyways. We've been very loose with the filings that everyone has made in this hearing, and I'm not sure what the relevance is when it comes to this at this point in time.
So I think, Mr. Shaw, what is your response?
Judge, the relevance is that there's nothing new alleged now. And I would argue, Judge, that, the relevance is, this is the petitioner's motion for permanent protective. Everything in that document that the petitioner has filed, everything in that motion is from prior to the 12-month protective order. My objection, I sympathize with Mr. Spiesman's objection, because that's what I had been arguing this entire time, that nothing new has been alleged. That shows.
Ma'am, please don't. Go ahead.
Shows a basis for extending the 12-month protective order. And I was just, that was
So you can ask her that, because what her allegations are in the permanent and why what she's alleged and why in the permanent is relevant to the hearing. I think the confusion is, and the testimony I've heard is that the allegations for which the warrant was issued were alleged to have occurred. The incident is alleged to have occurred before the issuance of the TPO, but the warrant was actually issued after. So I think that was a bit of a confusing question on that first one. So you may ask those questions. I would ask you to keep it short, because the court has those before it. All right, the court already has the petition. I have the motion, and I have all the testimony and evidence I'm hearing today. So you may ask those questions without going back over every single thing in the initial petition that's already been heard. So you can ask about that.
And in that case, it seems that the court is quite clear with that regard, and so I don't actually have any further questions.
Okay. Mr. Spiesman, any redirect?
All right.
Judge, I'm just checking my notes.
Oh my God. Another one. Another failed attempt. We understand he didn't show up at her house and shoot her or beat her up in the last 12 months.
Just 1 second. I don't think so.
But doesn't mean
Right.
he hasn't done some things that have made
That's
you
fine.
feel like
Let's just take
this needs to continue. They're going to take a break.
Well, I would object to Mr. Spiesman consulting with Ms. Morgan. She's technically on the stand right now.
Of course you will.
So he's going to be redirecting Ms. Morgan.
Judge, I don't have any more questions. I have nothing else for this court.
Okay.
We have completed our evidence. We rest.
Okay. All right. Mr. Shaw, the petitioner has rested. I
Literally.
believe
Going to take
your
a nap now.
client does have pending criminal charges, so he does need to be aware that, and I'll ask you this in a minute, but that anything that if he decides to give any testimony, anything said can be used against him in any future criminal proceeding. And so have you gone over that with him?
I have, Judge.
Okay. Do you have any evidence that y'all would wish to present at this time?
Yes, Judge. There's this one witness, the eyewitness that we alluded to earlier, Judge, which is forget his name. Mr. Morgan, can you help us out with?
Forgot the name of the witness.
The witness's name and.
Wow. Okay.
We have
IP Freely. You started.
Can't hear you. Still nothing.
So often with headphones and Bluetooth, the audio does not work correctly. So you're likely going to have to turn off Bluetooth.
Or you don't even have to. You're not really testifying to anything, Mr. Morgan. As long as you can hear me, let's just have the witness become available now.
So the witness is the only person who's going to testify? Is that what we're understanding?
Based on how this day is going, I do have to pick up a child at 4:00. I'm praying we're going to be done before then, with ample time to do that, Judge. But I have no choice but to do that.
I understand, and I think I'm definitely given all the evidence and testimony going to take some time once we're done to make sure I consider everything thoroughly and look at everything. But I will let the parties go.
Thank you, Judge. And I can come back after I pick up said child, but whatever would please.
We don't need. I mean, and both parties are represented by attorneys, so it's not like I have a pro se case with people going home. So we will communicate the order to the parties and their attorneys, and I would expect that they would abide by the current extended order until they get that order.
Thank you.
And Mr. Spiesman, my line of questioning will be extremely brief. Just a couple of questions.
Okay.
All right. There's no one in the waiting room at this time.
We don't even know the
Tony
name.
is still technically in the waiting room.
There's no one. We don't have a witness.
He may or may not be there for real.
Mr. Morgan, we can't hear you if you're trying to say something to us, but if you just have
Does this witness not exist? What's going on? Yeah, we won't find out if she grants it or not, but I think we'll all have a very good idea how it's going to turn out. There's nobody in the waiting room. There is no witness then.
You don't even know the name of the witness. His client can't even speak, apparently.
Mr. Morgan is just making faces.
Oh, I think you guys might be right that she's in his, I think that she's talking to Justin right now.
Mm-hmm.
Which Man Bun didn't even want happening.
Mr. Frederick that you're expecting? Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Oh, here we go, Mr. Guest.
Okay. All right.
And all he's going to testify is if he saw her at church or not. Who's this guy?
Charles
Does he go to the Egyptian church?
Your witness in and ask that he spell his name.
He looks like a bounty hunter.
Yes, Judge. Mr. Frederick, you'll have to unmute yourself, and if you'll raise your right answer.
The third.
Mr. Frederick, well, before I swear you, would you please state your full name
this guy
and then also spell it?
Internet lawyer?
Sure, it is Charles
Lloyd
Lloyd Frederick III. And you want me to spell out the whole name? You said
T-H-E.
Yes.
T-H-I-R-D.
Charles, and then Lloyd, L-L-O-Y-D, and then Frederick, F-R-E-D-E-R-I-C-K, and then the third.
T-H.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick.
Hello,
now,
bro.
do you swear and affirm that the testimony you will give to the court today will be the whole truth and the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the penalty of perjury?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick. You can lower your hand now. Mr. Frederick, do you know Mina Morgan?
Yes, I do.
And do you also know Christine Morgan?
I do not.
Have you learned of Christine Morgan at all?
Yes.
How have you learned of Christine Morgan?
Just from getting to know Mina Morgan.
And do you also go to a church, an Egyptian church?
I do.
Do you go to Saint Verena America Coptic Church?
Yes, I do.
And do you know if Mr. Mina Morgan goes to that church?
Yes, he does.
And have you ever seen Miss Christine Morgan at that church?
I've never seen her. Not with my own eyes. But I was told.
Objection, Your Honor. Objection. Hearsay.
Oh.
Mr. Shaw.
Mr. Frederick.
Hold on, Judge. I would like ruling.
Yes, don't let this
Okay,
go.
so I will sustain the hearsay objection at this point. I'm not sure where things were going. Go ahead, Mr.
That's
Shaw.
what I expected, Judge. So, Mr. Frederick, without telling this court what someone else told you, can you tell this court if do you know if
see her.
Miss Christine Morgan went to that church?
Objection, Your Honor.
He didn't see her. He's already
testified
said that.
specifically that he's never seen her. Thus, any presence of Miss Morgan would be out of the potential testimonial information this individual could provide to the court. So the only thing he could do would be to testify to what is hearsay without actually testifying to hearsay.
How do you blow that?
I don't, if he hadn't said what he said, maybe Mr. Shaw could have backdoored it in, but he said, I've never seen her. So if he hasn't
I agree with that. I agree with that, Judge. I'll move on.
All right, I will sustain the objection given that he said he's never met her.
Understood, Judge. All right, Mr. Frederick.
Where do we go from here now?
What does it matter now?
Do you know
the Muffin Man?
Know that do you know if Mr. Morgan and Miss Morgan were divorced?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance. Why is it relevant what this individual knows?
I'm just laying the foundation.
Go to order at McDonald's.
Did he ever tell you she was a B word?
I'm getting to a point, Judge.
You remember
that is
Cheddar
relevant,
Bowl
and
biscuits
it's going to go to the point that Mr. Morgan actually wants nothing to do with Miss Morgan and wants to stay as far away
He's
from
trying
her
to
as
salvage this witness.
No,
That's what I'm getting to.
Does that have to do with?
I'm not sure that. Sorry, I'm not sure that.
Turn your phone off, Judge.
He can testify to what someone else wants.
He's got nothing.
So I'm having a struggle with that.
Is this guy going to tell us that Mr. Morgan wants nothing to do with Miss Morgan?
I can try to lay some foundation and see if he has personal knowledge of it. And if he doesn't, then he doesn't. And we'll just.
It would be
foundation's been laid.
So the only way he could attribute that would be from things that Mr. Morgan has said to him. And Mr. Morgan has effectively invoked his fifth or is not testifying. So with that said,
it's
no
different.
It's got
I mean,
nothing.
unless he's like looking at someone and can tell by their facial, responses when you say someone's name and it's within lay testimony. I don't see how we could get to. And frankly, Judge, it's also relevant. It doesn't matter what Mr. Morgan wants or doesn't want. It matters whether there was acts of family violence and evidence to support it. I just moved to strike this witness. This is
Judge.
Irrelevant witness. Throw him out.
Relevance and his personal knowledge is based literally it's no different than a friend of Miss Morgan or brother of Miss Morgan appearing today testifying as to the relationship between them two. But it's literally the same thing. And if Mr. Frederick has personal knowledge
he's
of
never
the
talked to her,
relationship between
seen
them
her.
two, then he can testify to that. If he doesn't have personal knowledge, then Mr. Spiesman can object to speculation.
All right. So what I will say is that he has already said he's never met the petitioner. If he has never interacted with the petitioner or the two of them together and all of his information is from the respondent, then I may have a hard time finding this witness having personal knowledge of the relationship beyond another person's
This was his
individual
gotcha
perception.
moment.
So
right
I
here.
will let you
This
try
is
to
it.
lay that foundation.
Wow.
And I will take objections as they come.
Okay. Mr. Frederick, from speaking with Mr. Morgan, do you know do you know if Mr. Morgan wants to have any type of a relationship with Miss Morgan?
Objection calls for hearsay. After
Did
Did he
for the
tell you
comment.
he wanted
unless
her?
Mr. Frederick is the only one talking, Judge, it's hearsay. I mean,
I didn't ask for him to testify to the content of what was
hard
said.
to
I'm
watch.
asking him to testify whether or not he knows.
This is
There's
not
a-
how court works.
Whether or
right?
not
No.
he knows
No.
Even I know that.
And I'm
how
not even
Mr.
an attorney.
Morgan feels about a relationship with Miss Morgan.
honestly, Judge, I don't think it really matters. He can answer. I have no more objections.
Here's the thing. I'm gonna let you.
It is.
I got a kid to pick up, Your Honor.
Do whatever you want.
Under
Do
his
whatever.
impression,
I've already won this.
does
Justin.
I've
he have
already won this,
any
so it doesn't really
perception
matter.
as to whether the respondent wants to continue a relationship? All right, I'll let you ask that question.
Mr. Frederick, by respondent, we mean Mr. Morgan. You understand the question?
I do. What the question you just asked me? Yes.
He showed me some video he shot of her.
And so,
He's in a bedroom
based on your impression,
looking up at a smoke
does
detector.
Mr. Morgan want to have any relationship with Miss Morgan whatsoever?
None at all.
Thank you. That's all, Judge.
Okay. Whether that was a little bit different of a question. Whether he wants a relationship or not is not relevant to whether there. I see why you're asking it as to whether there's a reasonable likelihood of future violence, but his wanting or not wanting a relationship is not whether there have been acts of family violence committed in the past and whether there's a reasonable likelihood of them being committed in the future.
Oh, Mr. Frederick didn't.
But
take
I will
off today
take
for
that information for what it is. Do you have any other information from this witness
I hope Morgan paid him.
or any other questions from this witness?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Spiesman, do you have
Nope.
any cross?
Just a couple questions.
Oh my God, he's going to destroy his kid.
Mr. Frederick, my name is
Oh,
Justin
no.
Scott, and I represent Miss Morgan. Are you aware that Mr. Morgan's been arrested twice for beating Miss Morgan and stalking her?
Objection. What's the relevance of this witness being aware of any of
Just
that?
messing
First
with
of
you,
all,
bud.
all those incidents are irrelevant
You
because
brought
that's
it
all
on.
in the background.
You
We
did
said
this.
that would be generally covered just to lay the
You're playing
foundation
you
so
now,
the court
man
understands the
bun.
background. But now getting into the details of that and asking if this witness was aware of that or not is irrelevant.
But all
Well,
my
I
questions
did.
are fine. That one,
I
though?
sustained the early objection unless he had personal knowledge of their relationship. But you did ask him about their relationship. So I will ask the question if he's aware of the arrests.
So
He is
Mr.
on cross.
Sorry, Judge. Mr. Frederick, are you aware that Mr. Morgan was arrested for violently beating Miss Morgan?
Look at Shaw.
Are you aware of that?
No.
Okay. Are you aware that Mr. Morgan was arrested for putting video cameras in Miss Morgan's house and surveying her without her permission? Are you aware of
Yeah,
that?
just for the record, Judge, I have to object again. First of all, arrests are not what Mr. Morgan did. Arrests is something that was done to him. He was arrested. He has not been found guilty or been convicted of any of those
Not
allegations.
yet.
These allegations are from prior to the 12-month protective order. And when I asked the question about their relationship,
They just start kicking
I was
rocks and say
not
this ain't fair.
question, and we did not get into the specifics of
Let him have that, not let me.
Mr. Frederick's knowledge of the relationship between the two parties. So the only other question I asked was whether Mr. Morgan wanted to continue to have a relationship or
Judge,
not.
who's the speaking
And that was
objection?
the only question that I specifically did ask Mr.
So what is the basis of
That
your
was it. Irrelevant.
Basis is he doesn't know Mr.
Judge, I
Morgan
would
at all.
suggest to
And
the
this is a
court
waste of the
that
court's
It
time.
appears that I have no clue why Mr. Frederick's here, but it appears that Mr. Frederick's being tendered to some sort of either character or testimonial witness that will speak to the fact that Mr. Morgan wants nothing to do with Miss Morgan in spite of the alleged stalking that we presented to this court. And so it seems like he's kind of like a character witness almost, right? Mr. Morgan doesn't have the propensity to commit more violence because he doesn't want anything to do with her. Well, then obviously, if that's what he's suggesting, that's what his testimony is here for, his awareness or knowledge how the previous incidents would directly impeach or potentially change what his position is on his current testimony. So I think it's very relevant.
He's not a character witness. I've never asked Mr. Frederick a question about Mr. Morgan's character.
Well, then
I
for
asked
future
Mr.
contact.
Morgan, I asked Mr. Morgan if he was aware of Mr. Morgan wanting or not wanting a relationship with Miss Morgan. That has nothing to do with Mr. Morgan's character. And really the reason why I called Mr. Frederick was to impeach Miss Morgan and to show that on November 27, 2022,
So-
she was found at the church where she claimed she was not at.
And none of that has come out in this testimony
Nope.
because he said he's never met her, right?
Right. but
Never,
he's
never
not a
seen her
character
there.
witness.
Okay. So so it goes to the basis of knowledge. I'm going to allow the second question about the arrest, but then I'm not going to ask any further because he has not been offered as a character witness.
That's the only question I would have. So, and Mr. Frederick, it appears you can answer. Were you aware that he was arrested for unlawfully surveilling my client in her own home by placing a video there without her knowledge?
No.
Okay, I have nothing.
But the
further
whole
for you.
church
Thank you.
will
All right.
this
Any more
weekend.
questions for him, Mr. Shaw?
There you are.
Because
Mr.
church
Frederick.
people love to talk,
All right,
baby.
sir.
Yes,
You
they
may be
do.
excused and log off.
Woo! They got the best gossip and say the worst things.
Okay. Any more witnesses, Mr. Shaw?
God, I hope not.
Just argument.
All right.
No, I just wanna cry.
More, do you have any other evidence, Mr. Spiesman?
No, Judge, just argument.
Okay, so Mr. Spiesman, do you want to reserve close? Or do
Yes,
you want to
Judge.
open and then close?
Oh, I can never get these
Whatever takes less time, Your Honor.
I'll reserve, Judge.
Okay. All right, Mr. Shaw, I will hear from you.
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh,
Your Honor,
God.
as the court is aware, the motion for the protective order, if we go through line by line, every item that's listed in the motion for the protective order, every item in it is from prior to the 12-month protective order that was issued. What's preposterous is this very case, 21 PO 9219, is actually listed as one of the
Absolutely.
cases where the petitioner claims was one of the cases that's pending against Mr. Morgan. This very protective order case is listed as a case in this petition. 21 PO 9219. It's
Feel like
listed
Mr.
as a
Morgan's
civil
trying
action
to win
number, and
Fred
it's
some
listed
money.
in the petitioner's narrative. Every other case that's listed in there is from prior to the 12-month protective order. These are cases that are still pending, that initially the petitioner had difficulty obtaining an arrest warrant, and then private warrant applications were sought, and those are still pending. So Mr. Morgan has not been found guilty, and I contest, Judge, and I submit to the court, Judge, that a pending arrest warrant, a pending criminal case, a charge should not be held against Mr. Morgan, which was the very reason why Mr. Morgan had his hands tied behind his back today and couldn't defend himself at the risk of testifying and then being compelled to testify at the criminal proceeding. So the arrests and the pending criminal charges against him currently are not indicative of anything whatsoever. And again, they're from prior to the 12-month event. Allegations of withholding car keys, garage doors, all of that,
Sex bots.
those are not basis for a protective order. Protective orders are very specific. They're for stalking and for family violence. From all the testimony that we heard today, Judge, there's been zero allegation of any family violence or any violence whatsoever under any definition of violence. I don't care what colloquial. I asked Ms. Morgan very specifically and very simply, has there been any act of violence against you from Mr. Morgan since January of 2022? And she said, well, I don't know what you mean by violence. And this was after a long back and forth between Mr. Spiesman and myself, where Mr. Spiesman contested that the term family violence was a term of was a legal term, and we went back and forth on that. I think we all know what violence means. And I asked Ms. Morgan specifically if there's been any allegation of violence against her since January, and she declined to answer that question by claiming that she didn't know what violence meant. And Mr. Spiesman obviously tried to give her cues and say, oh, threats are violence, allegations of this and that are violence, but there's been no actual physical violence, no allegation of that at all since the 12-month protective. There's been allegations, Judge, that Miss Morgan was under surveillance from social media. There's been zero evidence whatsoever that it was Mr. Morgan. There was supposedly some email that matched Mr. Morgan's, but Miss Morgan's own testimony said she didn't know all of Mr. Morgan's email addresses, and so she didn't know if that she can't say if that email address is specifically his, or if someone else is using that email address, or if she had that email address, why do we not have any screenshots or any evidence? They could have presented that evidence, Judge, and shown that, hey, this is the email address. They didn't even list out the actual email address that was used.
It was Big D Morgan at Gmail
that is associated with the alleged social media stalking that's happening, the iCloud stalking that's happening. There's no actual evidence of that. They knew that this case was happening today. They knew the hearing was happening today. She was there in December. She's there.
It's just too
they could have brought all of that. And there's no actual evidence that it was Mr. Morgan stalking her on social media or on iCloud. I don't completely understand what she means by Mr. Morgan hacking into her DMV or DDS account. She claims that only Mr. Morgan had access to that. Again, it's completely speculative that it was Mr. Morgan. And even if it was Mr. Morgan, I fail to understand how that is stalking. So the entirety of everything that I've listed out, Judge, in my notes, of what the petitioner claims to be any new allegations of stalking are simply Mr. Morgan logging into her iCloud or logging into Miss Morgan's DMV account. And again, this is the logging into the iCloud, logging into the social media accounts. Miss Morgan sought out, police intervention for that, and they declined to do anything about it. So I think that's also indicative of whether there's any evidence that it was actual, something that Mr. Morgan did. And I think at best it's speculative.
It also didn't prove he didn't do it. Should have been an investigation. Then it could have proved it really wasn't him.
I want to go back to what Mr. Ayad Imad said. He said that, I think he said that this incident was from, I don't think Mr. Spiesman was ever able to nail down a specific date with Mr. Imad of when this claim was from. He asked, was this from a certain, do you remember the month or the year? And then Mr. Spiesman tried to lead him, and I objected to that. But all that Mr. Imad said was that it happened on a Sunday morning. So we don't actually know if this this allegation of I'll put her in a coffin or something like that was from after the 12-month protective order. There's no actual evidence that it happened after the 12-month.
I think Justin's going to take about 1 minute.
Even if it did,
you don't need long. You don't need long.
Was that he tried to make me hear it without looking at it. That's what Mr. Imad said. So we don't even know if Mr. Morgan directed it at Mr. Iman. We don't know if he was talking about Miss Morgan. We don't know if this was something that he overheard and was eavesdropping on Mr. Morgan. It's just, there's not, I mean, he's presuming that it was Mr. Morgan, and that was the only, that was the only incident that he talked about, that Mr. Iman talked about. And even that, he doesn't know who it was referring to. He believes that it was about Miss Christine Morgan, but he doesn't know that for sure. He didn't testify that it was about Miss Morgan. So that was Mr. Iman. And then the only other points that I have that are allegations of something that happened after the 12-month protective order was the friend Artroff that Miss Morgan works with, and he claimed that there was a tracking device on his vehicle, and he himself said, but yeah, that was a tracking device that was alleged in the initial TPOs from prior to the 12-month TPO, and then he got into how he believed he was being followed by Mr. Morgan. Excuse me. And that too was January 2022. I don't know if that was before or after the 12-month protective order was issued, but he specifically said, I did not see the face clearly. That's what Mr. Artroff testified to. He said, I did not see the face clearly. I only recognized the vehicle, and I believe that vehicle was the same vehicle that Mr. Morgan was driving. So we don't know if that was also Mr. Morgan. And literally just following another vehicle and being close to that vehicle, nothing else more than that. So that's the extent of the list of items that I have listed in my notes. I don't know if I missed anything else, but those were the
you
list
got
of
the
items
entire
that
case.
I heard.
Just read back everything.
Testimony.
Make no points.
We heard it all the first
I already
time.
addressed how car titles, car keys, passports, returning those items, that can't be the basis of seeking a permanent protective order. It has to be stalking or family violence. And both those are specifically defined in the statute.
For real, he's been stone-faced through this entire thing.
Yeah, he really has. Completely emotionless.
And I think by the petitioner's own testimony, when I specifically asked her, has there been any new family violence since the protective order? She said there was threat, there was fear, and there was surveillance. That's what she claimed. But she didn't say there was zero violence. And when it came to the specifics of threats, fears, and surveillance, there was no actual specific details that it was Mr. Morgan. At best, it's all completely speculative. There's no actual recordings. There was no actual evidence that Mr. Morgan,
God willing, man,
put Miss Morgan under any surveillance, hacked into any of her social media. There's no actual evidence that he threatened her. It's all completely speculative, Judge. And it's completely speculative that even if those things did occur, that it was Mr. Morgan.
Sure.
Thank you.
I submit to the court that there's not much weight to the allegations of the criminal charges pending against Mr. Morgan. Mr. Joe Hibachi is representing Mr. Morgan.
Mr. Hibachi.
And
love his restaurant.
As Your Honor knows, those charges are still pending. He's not convicted of those, and he's innocent of those charges until proven guilty. It should not be the basis for any evidence or any weight as to the allegations made right now. So I fail to see any basis for extending the protective order. And just lastly, Judge, and I'll shut up after this. Miss Morgan herself testified in a direct from Mr. Spiesman that she feels safe when the court orders a protective order, and once the protective order is issued, she feels safe from that. And I submit to you, Judge, that that is what has occurred in the last 12 months. Yet, due to the past relationship that
Justin
they've
has
had,
to
the
leave?
divorce that they've had,
I can't give his closing
how
argument.
That's what I was thinking. Is he going
was
this long just to F with
continue
Justin and this weird
use
child that he
this
may need to
Gotta
pick
go.
up?
judge
Yeah, I
as
gotta pick up the kid.
an attack on Mr. Morgan rather than to protect herself? And I just ask Judge that there's no basis for extending the protective order. Thank you.
Yep, we heard you.
Yeah.
Yep. Good
Hi,
job.
Mr.
Got it.
Speisman.
I'm gonna move real quick, Judge.
I know.
So,
He ain't kidding either.
for a
So knock
situation
it
like
out.
this, Judge, my perspective
great
is
day.
is
Thank
that
you.
Your Honor must look toward the path that got us here, the things that occurred after we reached that milestone, and then the likelihood that this behavior is going to continue unless Your Honor gives Ms. Morgan this order. The path that got us here is a simple one, Judge. Testimony that is supported by 7 years of various acts of family violence. Over those 7 years, 30 different attempts at violence. Over those 7 years, at least 2 arrests, and then a third that was subsequently dismissed because Ms. Morgan decided to give this man a second chance. And that's where that second chance got us. Another act of family violence. So the propensity and likely that this behavior is going to continue, if we look to the past, is alarmingly overwhelming. 7 years of family violence where this woman has lived in fear, and scared, and as a victim. And the fact that Mr. Shaw is somehow characterizing his client as the victim is frankly disgusting. That is so far from the truth and so far what the evidence supports. But nonetheless, when Ms. Morgan stands up for herself and gets a 12-month order, what she expects is to retreat to her humble home and be left alone. But here's what the evidence shows after she gets that order. The first thing that he does is he commits a violation of 16-721, criminal trespass, which is family violence, Judge, right there in the statute, by maliciously interfering with at least her passport, with at least her documentation, and at least her car keys. Easy as can be. So for 5 months after requesting the return of these items, she does not receive them, and he clearly violates it. And in addition to that, that is now a separate act of family violence after the 12-month has been put into place. Hopefully, that in and of itself is the end. But no, that's not. We have evidence of unlawful access, computer invasion of privacy. And while obviously we can sit here and say, well, there's no direct evidence other than an email that is at least has MM in it, right? Nina Morgan, there's not some overwhelming evidence. He wasn't caught in the act. Well, this is a preponderance of the evidence standard. And it's more likely than not, based on the past propensity and behavior, that Mr. Morgan accessed her DDS profile, that accessed her iCloud, the same man that puts trackers in her cars and video surveillance in her home. It's as easy as math. 1 + 1 = 2. Then, if that's not enough, he comes into contact with her brother. And there was absolutely no contradicting to this testimony that he says that he's going to put my client in a grave. That is terroristic threats. And when given to her, that is simple assault. If not something greater, another act of family violence. This man had every opportunity to walk away from her brother and not say a word. But instead, at a church that she wasn't at, that her brother was at, he decides to threaten his sister's life. Of course, that is going to get back to Ms. Morgan, and he should have known that. So now we have criminal trespass, unlawful access, computer evasion of privacy, and we have a separate act of terroristic threats or simple assault.
So now he's knocked down that whole thing. Nothing is happening.
A woman's brother that you were going to kill her is a quick route for that information to get to her. She indicates that when she hears that, Judge, being with her family for a week while her mother is sick with breast cancer, she retreats back to Atlanta to feel safe. That is horrible that she has to live in that world. And for them to somehow say that she's attending this church to make contact with them is preposterous. For them to say that she had his address in Tennessee but decided to burn $5,500 to get him served is preposterous. It makes no logical sense. My client is not trying to spend money. My client is trying to find peace. And this money is an investment in her peace. But then we have evidence that Mr. Morgan, driving a car that matches the exact description of the one he drives with a similarly situated individual at the driver's seat, follows the car that Miss Morgan is in, is driven by her best friend and business partner, who also finds out that there's a tracking device on his car. There gets to a point, Judge, where all of these coincidences cannot be coincidences. They're indicative of Mr. Morgan's relentless disregard for the court order. And it's frankly, from my perspective, a miracle that he's not been jailed for violating this and charged with ag stalking. The reality is that I have a client that is fearful for her life, that should be fearful for her life. Because when people threaten your life, you're scared for your life. When people track you, you're scared for your life. When you retreat to Atlanta and you're still being stalked through access of your devices, you're scared for her life. And Mr. Morgan has a history of this. This isn't a one-time thing. It happens all the time. That said, Judge, you are the same evidence I did. In some ways, I'm frustrated that we vacated the previous order, but in some ways, I'm thankful because I think that we probably gave you more to hang your hat on. You issued this once already, and Mr. Morgan in his defense did nothing to change this court's perspective, in my humble opinion. In fact, Judge, while acceptance of a Fifth Amendment or an invocation of a Fifth Amendment, that can be used against you in a civil case. And this is a civil case. And so the reality is that while he's not going to in any way incriminate himself, invoking your Fifth in a civil setting is indicative of guilt. That's what it's indicative of. And so with that said, Judge, this isn't an impossible standard to meet. It is a preponderance by the evidence. And when you look at every one of these actions and behaviors, I think we have substantial evidence to put this order in place. I think any one of these alleged violations would be enough. But this criminal trespass and the threatening to kill her, to me, which have not been contradicted at all, are absolutely indicative of the type of manipulation and control that Mr. Morgan is going to continue if he doesn't have it. And we all know, just like Mr. Shaw said, we snap a finger and those criminal cases go away, right? It's just an arrest and she's left with nothing, no protection. But this order will give her some peace so that she can proceed through her life without the continued threat that Mr. Morgan brings into her life every single day. And the only thing that's going to stop him from doing it is the threat that he could be jailed for aggravated stalking. He has tried to contact her in a manipulative way. He's done it through her brother, and he's taken action against her poor dad who's sick. And everything adds to the fact that this man has absolutely no limitations to what he's willing to do. We'd ask that you extend this order permanently. We believe we've met the standard required to do so, and we believe that respondents' arguments fail on their faces, persuading this court to not put this in place.
All right. Thank you all. I know it's been a long day. I'm going to take everything into consideration. I do also want to let you know that I have been alerted that he has completed all of his family violence intervention classes. They regularly update me on any defendants that appear on the calendar. Also, anything that happens from this order will not affect the criminal case either way, whether it's granted or not. And Mr. Mina faces the possibility of aggravated stalking if he violates any of those current criminal no contact orders as well. And so I will look at everything in this case. I'm going to extend extend the 12-month order to tomorrow's date to be safe. But if I issue the order, or if I can get the order in today,
wow, she's going to actually
today.
Take some time.
And y'all will be notified and get a copy of that order. Staff will email you a copy of that order when it is filed. Okay.
She's getting it. She's getting
all right.
it.
Anything else
no
from any of the parties?
She's not getting it.
They are.
No, Your Honor.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And have a good rest of your day.
Well, BHS, that was a interesting one to be watching. No diggity, no doubt.
That was crazy.
I would be
crazy,
extremely shocked if he doesn't get it. But I think the fact that it's again, it's a PPO, not a TPO. So I mean, TPOs are obviously very important. This is a whole other level. You know, this is for lifetime, right? Basically.
Yeah. But at the same time, I feel like it's a good thing that she had already got the TPO anyways. So we know that they've already established. I mean, she's going to go against what was set forth already, that they'd established that there was, all this family violence and things like that. And she's listening to the stuff about the, putting the cameras in her house and tracking people. I mean, all that. No, it's not him putting his hands on, but it all plays to the psyche of the guy. Sure. And his motivations and things like that. He is obviously not over this woman.
And the way that she warned him about the aggravated stalking, and that kind of shows.
And I felt like she tipped her hand. She's like, I'm gonna put this the protective order in place until tomorrow, till the
one more day.
Official one is put out. And it's gonna be there's no doubt in my mind that he won't be hit with the old PPO. No doubt.
All right. That is that. That was on many different levels. Very interesting. I do feel bad for her. I believe her. I really do.
I do too.
I believe that she is scared of him. I think that she has a reason to. We see so many of these cases where people come in and say so many crazy things, right? And they have nothing to back it up with. Well, she had everything to back it up with. Right there. Had him arrested, called the cops, did things right.
Got pending cases against the guy right now. Right now.
Wow.
He's innocent until proven guilty, allegedly. But here's the thing everybody needs to remember. If you enjoy this kind of stuff, we do this 5 days a week here. Please do us a favor. Wherever you're watching at, subscribe and like. Do all those really good things, because without you guys being here, we can't be here. Simple as that.
One other thing, too, I did tell everybody during the chase yesterday, and of course we jumped into this so quickly we didn't have a chance, but about what happened with court the other day. I kind of teased it. I didn't know if you wanted to tell everybody or wait.
So yeah, there was an attack put out against us for the if you remember the brother versus the brother thing, Mr. Lewis versus Mr. Lewis. So that night there's actually some news Creed doesn't even know.
Oh,
that night we were hit with that it had to be taken down. It wasn't like a strike or anything, but because there was some personal information, they were saying that you need to be taken down. Well, you have a choice of, you can maybe state your case a little bit or whatever, or you can just let it go. I did state my case. Well, what I thought, and I just didn't think much about it. And by about 1:30, 2 o'clock yesterday, I noticed it was back up.
Oh,
so it had been taken down, but now it is back up. So let's see how long it stays back up, because obviously one of the people that was involved in that very first case did not want us to see what was being said in that video. So make of that what you will. But I think we all have an idea of what was going on behind keeping that suppressed.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens. We might hear from YouTube down the road in a few days. But as of right now, they backed up on what they had said to bring it down. Policies, Creed. Policies. They also said we can cuss again, Creed.
Oh, yeah.
They've gone back on that. Still within the first couple of minutes or whatever it is.
I think it's an algorithm thing.
Yeah,
I would imagine, which does make sense.
But they've allowed, as long as you aren't hitting the old F word as hard as you can, nonstop. Like you're arresting someone in Arkansas. Speaking of that, don't forget Wild Woman Wednesday on. We got a chase today, Creed, and we got some doozies.
Yes, many of you in the chat are spot on.
Some doozies. Thank these people and let's get on out of here.
Angela, ick cold or icy cold, or whichever. It's up to you. Flush, double down on the flush. Deb, just Deb. They call me Rose. Heather, Matt, Dreamweaver, Gary, Amber, and thank you guys for all the likes and new subs. Great crowd today, up over 200 almost the entire day watching that one. And it was a hell of a case. We'll be back, like Mikey said, 4:05 East for Wild Woman Wednesday, and we got a chase.
Just remember, 1 + 1 = 2. Have fun, baby.